And welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us once again. We are back at it. Baseball is back. Saw quite a few offseason moves that kind of changed the shape of the league anyway. We'll kind of go through every single one of those team by team. A lot of you guys are returning to us once again. Really appreciate that. Those of you who joined us last season, expect a lot more coverage this year of baseball anyway. We know a lot of you guys came to us from our baseball coverage last year. That's where we know a lot of you fans really want to focus that coverage on, so we're going to focus on that, especially here to begin the year. We're going to be bringing you a ton of live baseball games this spring, starting tomorrow evening when the opening day even begins. I work all day during the day, but we will do the Shohei Ohtani first start of the season tomorrow against Oakland. So that should be an interesting game as far as the Shohei Ohtani aspect of it. We'll break down a lot of the coverage, or a lot of the games that happen during the day. And then as we go into the weekend, we'll have another game for you guys Friday evening. We'll be off on Saturday and Sunday evenings. However, on Sunday, we will try to do a couple of games earlier in the day for you guys that day as well. So just in the next few days, we're going to try to bring you guys 4 baseball games here at the Upside Sports Network. So appreciate you guys joining us. Thank you, Mark, for coming back. Appreciate you for coming back here to the Upside. And make sure you drop a like, hit that subscribe button if you're new to us. But without further ado, let's kind of get into things. Of course, some of the biggest moves this offseason revolved around the big-name free agents that were out there. Jacob deGrom goes to Texas. Justin Verlander goes to the Mets to fill that spot. Houston, of course, no longer has Verlander. They had Jose Altuve go down due to injury during the World Baseball Classic. Looks like he's going to miss at least a month, probably 2. Tristan McKenzie got injured during spring training for the Cleveland Guardians. Another piece to keep an eye on is all the injuries that kind of stacked up in the final week as we ramped up towards the season. So we'll see how that affects the Guardians, their outlook going into the season. The White Sox are actually healthy for once, and it looks like they might have all their ducks in a row going into the season. Now, they were one of the most underperforming teams. We'll see how they go into this next year. Now, of course, the New York Yankees got off to the best start in Major League Baseball last year, but weren't really more than a 500 team as they went down the stretch and ultimately got bounced in the playoffs rather handily by Houston. Hopefully they can bounce back, but they now have Aaron Judge back. The biggest question mark for them is health. Are they going to be able to keep Aaron Judge healthy? That's been a question throughout his career. He played very well last year, broke the American League home run record, Roger Maris, and all of that. Is he able to do the same level of performance? Because I think the Yankees are absolutely going to need it. Now, they did bring in Carlos Rodon to help solidify that starting rotation. I still think they're lacking some arms at the back end of that rotation. However, Rodon is a very nice piece for them to have. Out in the American League Central, we talked about the White Sox, how they're back and healthy. The Twins were one of the most underperforming teams in the second half of the year after they made such an improvement at the trade deadline. Hopefully those pieces are now there, able to kind of solidify an entire season for them. And that starting pitching will hopefully hold up for them. But again, that's a lot of wishes and maybes. We'll see who ultimately comes down with it. On the National League side, of course, you have the New York Mets conversation about all the money they spent this offseason. Was that the right thing for them to do? I mean, baseball is a team sport. It's not about going out there and having the biggest checkbook, even though for years it seemed like the Steinbrenner Yankees were always right there. And I think the Mets will still be in playoff contention. But do I think they're going to have what it takes to ultimately win in October? That remains to be seen. They did lose Edwin Diaz in that World Baseball Classic. Looks like he is going to be out for the entire season. There has been some talk about him possibly returning in September, October. We'll see if that ultimately happens. But as things stand right now, the Mets, look to have their closer position solidified with an in-house option in David Robertson. Of course, you have the champions anyway from a previous season anyway, the Atlanta Braves still in that same division. The Phillies made it all the way to the World Series, a very tough division in its own right. In the NL Central, kind of more of a how do I put this? A more of a budget division, if you will. A lot of good teams here, but none of the behemoths like they do in the NL East or the NL West. These are teams that are operating on a budget, and with that in mind, there's still a couple of really good teams in this division. The Milwaukee Brewers are right there. However, they have concerns about payroll going forward. Are they going to be able to continue to keep their main pieces that they have on the roster? And then, of course, the St. Louis Cardinals. They look really strong this year. Jordan Walker, one of their top young prospects, one of the top young prospects in the game, broke camp with the Cardinals. Looks like he's going to probably play a significant role either in the outfield or DH or kind of floating around the infield as well. But he's going to have a role on that team going forward. So things look good if you're a Cardinals fan. And of course, the NL West. I mean, what a surprise. Once again, the San Diego Padres already have a shortstop in-house in Fernando Tatis. There were some rumblings out there that maybe the Padres weren't exactly happy with him long term. Maybe he could have been had for the right price or in the offseason via trade. Ultimately, they decide to hold on to him and move him to a corner outfield spot is what it sounds like will ultimately end up happening. But they decide that they want to bring in a shortstop, some more leadership skills. They bring in Xander Bogaerts. What a move for them. They still have a very nice rotation. Joe Musgrove is going to start the season on IL. He should be coming back at some point. They made a number of good veteran additions, non-roster invites. I think we'll break camp at some point with them, or at least come up in the next couple of weeks and have an impact for them. They did bring in a DH in Nelson Cruz as well. They brought in Matt Carpenter to kind of also play that DH role, first base, etc. So they're another strong team in the NL West. But of course, it all starts with the LA Dodgers in the NL West. Are they going to be able to hold on with all the injury issues that they've had, the aging core that they now have with Clayton Kershaw, Freddie Freeman is still, of course, a fantastic first baseman. Mookie Betts is going to kind of move around a little bit this year defensively, it sounds like. And, of course, the big question for them is what are they going to do at shortstop? It sounds like they're going to piece it together as the season goes along. Their original plan was to, of course, bring back Trey Turner. That, of course, didn't happen. He goes to Philadelphia to bolster their lineup, and my, do they need it now with the injury to Rhys Hoskins. We'll get into that as well. But things look good if you're a Dodgers fan from the standpoint of you still have Freeman, you still have Betts, and you still have Smith. You have the 1, 2, 3 there, and then you try to figure things out. Hopefully your platoons play a little bit better, and you still get enough production out of that starting rotation. Enough guys kind of overperforming their projections, like we saw with Tyler Anderson in years past, those kinds of things. Maybe we could see something like that from the Dodgers this year. But appreciate you guys joining us so far. Make sure you join us as we're going to be bringing you a ton of live baseball games this year. Hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll be bringing you all of them live here at the Upside Sports Network. But let's get into it. Alrighty here. So one of the sites that I like to use is the MLBTradeRumors.com website. If you guys haven't followed me before, make sure you do on Twitter as well. A lot of your news, if you want to kind of read more in-depth stories on the, without a bias, if you will, MLB Trade Rumors, for the most part, does a good job of that. They still have their bias every now and again, depending on which author is writing the story. But for the most part, it's a pretty solid place to find just information if you're trying to keep up with transactions that happen on the day-to-day, those kinds of things. But make sure you hit that subscribe button, and we'll kind of break it down for you, tell you what it means for each club, those kinds of things. If a trade happens, we'll break down that trade for you guys here. As I mentioned, we'll be focusing quite a bit on the baseball season this year because we know quite a few guys joined us last year during our baseball coverage, and we really appreciate that. So don't be afraid. Say hello. Join the chat. We're going to try to do some fantasy drafts later on this evening as well, give you our predictions for what's ultimately going to happen during the baseball season this year. We're going to have probably a 2, maybe a 3-hour-long live today, just kind of break down team by team, division by division, ultimately give you the projections as to where things will ultimately end up, and then try to do some fantasy drafts. So make sure you stick around, and we'll get to some of those as well. But as I mentioned, MLB Trade Rumors is a good site to kind of keep up with all the information. Now that we're finally to the season, we shouldn't see too many transactions happen as far as trades or that kind of thing. Major League rosters are pretty much set at this point. You might have some options at the back end of a roster that are available, but you're not going to see like a major trade to shift the dynamic of a team right off the bat here. The only time you ever see that is when you have a really struggling team and a team that instantly loses an important piece to their either their rotation or their lineup. The Guardians are the team I would think would need to make some type of a splash there as far as their rotation, but they already have enough rotation pieces in-house, and they aren't exactly going to trade those young pieces to go out there and solve the hole. Tristan McKenzie leaves in that starting rotation, so they're just going to have to weather the storm. So kind of keep your eyes peeled for what ultimately happens as we get into June, July, approaching that trade deadline. But let's kind of break things down. We'll start off in the American League East anyway. We'll start with the Baltimore Orioles, one of the teams that's on the rise this year. Looks like their lineup's going to be pretty solid this year with the addition of Gunnar Henderson on a full season this year for them. One of the MVP favorites this year is going to be Adley Rutschman. In the second half of last year, he was the MVP, honestly. I mean, he was performing at that high of a level, and yes, I understand Aaron Judge was fantastic, but the majority of his production came in the first half. He was still very solid, though. But Adley Rutschman is one of the guys you should really be focusing on. I like the pieces that they added this roster, kind of veterans to kind of help out around the edges, looking at guys like Adam Frazier, looking at guys at the rotation like Kyle Gibson. Nobody who really moves the needle too far, but enough to give these young guys some veteran experience around them to where not all the pressure falls onto them. That's one thing I worry about with the Houston Astros rotation now that Verlander's gone, Garrett Cole's gone. They don't have those horses at the top of the rotation for them to rely on. Right now, the veteran of the rotation, if you will, is Lance McCullers, and I'm not sure he's ready to answer the bell the same way Garrett Cole or Justin Verlander were. Now, both of those guys are very different type of pitchers. McCullers is more of a mid-rotation starter. They're going to be relying on Christian Javier. They're going to be relying on Framber Valdez to kind of headline that rotation. But a team like Baltimore to bring in a guy like Kyle Gibson to answer those questions for that young rotation. They still have John Means there as well. But I really like where this team is going. Expect them to be in wild card contention. Not necessarily for the division, but I really like them as a wild card contender this year. Go back one real quick. We'll kind of break down the Boston Red Sox real quick. Boston did a nice job bringing in a guy like Masataka. Make sure I pronounce this right. Masataka Yoshida. He's going to probably be playing an outfield position, not really a DH for them. But he's really the one big addition that they made this offseason. They lost, of course, Xander Bogaerts. They didn't really look very good this offseason. They did not have a good offseason in my estimation. The one thing they did right was bringing back Rafael Devers, getting that extension done. Without that extension, they were in discussions for probably the worst offseason in all of Major League Baseball. And I still think they're right there. But in my opinion, they're a team that's probably going to finish in the cellar of that American League East. It's a very competitive division. So by no rights does this mean the Red Sox are, a terrible team in all rights. But I don't think that they're anywhere near competitive against, say, the Yankees, the Blue Jays, the Rays, or even the Orioles. I think they're the clear number 5 in this division. They're counting on Enrique Hernandez to take over that spot at shortstop for Xander Bogaerts. Of course, you still have Devers. The lineup still looks somewhat productive. You bring in a guy like Adam Duvall to take over some at-bats. I like to see Reese McGuire get a full season as the number 1 catcher for them. And then, of course, they have a decent bench, not necessarily anything you'd want to write home about. Now, as far as their rotation, a lot of injury risk. Chris Sale, Corey Kluber, etc. They're counting on some young guys to come back and have bounce-back years as well. They brought in some good bullpen arms. That's the one thing the Red Sox did right, is they reinforced that bullpen to make it at least a little bit shorter of a game. Now, will that bullpen be able to hold up for 162? I don't think it will. I think that rotation's also going to falter. I think by the All-Star break, we're clearly going to see the Red Sox in sell mode, and we could see a guy like Chris Sale be moved at the deadline if he's healthy. His name was tossed around this offseason as a name who could be moved. Maybe a team that's in a contention anyway wants to take on the money of a Chris Sale and says, hey, we'll take him off your hands. Here's a bag of beans, if you will. Maybe he's able to raise his stock price a little bit higher than that at that point anyway. But we'll see what ultimately happens there. But I really like the direction as far as the Orioles. The Red Sox, on the other hand, I think this is a slow, winding trail down. The one thing I'm wondering long-term for the Red Sox is Kyle Bloom long for the Boston Red Sox. I mean, he does things very differently than say, like the Tampa Bay Rays. He comes from that mindset. The Red Sox have always tried to compete with the Yankees as far as spending money, keeping their own, those types of things. And they didn't really do that with Kyle Bloom. That's something I'm really wondering long term. Is that the strategy the Red Sox themselves are going to see as successful? Now, the ownership there of the Red Sox is seeing things a little bit differently than they have in the past. I wonder about their means financially to invest in the major league club, and I wonder what their wherewithal is financially going forward. That may be the more the reason why they brought in Kyle Bloom than anything else. Remember, they did flirt with the Moneyball back in the day when the Oakland A's first brought it out. Maybe this is their finally being willing to go that direction. But again, this is an organization that looks to need an identity really more than anything else. Welcome in, Kenny. Appreciate you coming back. I'm envious you have Jordan Walker. Yeah, Jordan Walker should be very nice this year for the Cardinals. I agree. Let's continue our breakdown of the AL East anyway. We'll go with the New York Yankees. The new look New York Yankees. Now, of course, they brought back Anthony Rizzo. That was kind of the first big domino for them, as they had to bring back some type of veteran leadership. Rizzo brought that in spades. Judge is more of the silent type, so he's not necessarily the vocal leader of that locker room. That's going to be Anthony Rizzo. A 6-game losing streak. Who are you going to be counting on to, tap the guys on the back of the, shoulder, say, hey, come on, guys, let's keep our heads in the game. That's going to be Anthony Rizzo, not Aaron Judge. So good job for the Yankees to be able to bring him back. They still have a little bit of a glut of middle infielders. I wonder if they're going to be able to solve that via trade over the next couple of days. Remember how I mentioned you're going to see some back of the roster additions and subtractions. The Yankees are one of the teams that's going to have to figure those kinds of things out now that Volpe is going to be the starting shortstop for the New York Yankees. Now, of course, the big story this offseason was they were able to retain Aaron Judge and keep him from going to the San Francisco Giants, who they play on opening day. So that game should be very interesting for obvious reasons. Giancarlo Stanton had a decent year last year when he was protected by Aaron Judge. I wonder if he's able to keep that level of production or if we continue to see a backslide for him from his MVP heydays. The other thing is they are counting on a ton of bounce-back seasons in this lineup. You're looking at guys like DJ LeMahieu, Aaron Hicks, Josh Donaldson, players like that need to have big bounce-back years. Otherwise, the Yankees are going to be right back where they were at the second half of the season last year, and that's no better than a 500 club. And that's with Aaron Judge in the lineup. If Aaron Judge misses time for, say, a nagging injury, pulls a hamstring, misses a month, the Yankees are going to have some serious questions about their lineup. Now, of course, their rotation looks a lot better at the top with the addition of Carlos Rodon. I wonder about the ability of Garrett Cole to still be an ace-level pitcher. He's not necessarily in the top 10 pitchers in the game anymore. The main reason for that is he gave up a lot of home runs, a lot of hard contact as well. If he's able to get the ball down, which I think was his biggest issue last year, maybe he's able to return to that ace-level pitcher that we expect him to be. Now, the stuff is still there. He's still striking out a number of hitters, but I just wonder about the run prevention for Garrett Cole going forward. If he's able to get the ball down, maybe he returns back to the form that he had, but the Yankees have some question marks, and I still think they're a really good team as far as being able to in wild card contention, maybe even for the division crown. But the question will be is whether or not the health is going to be there, whether or not they get the bounce back seasons, and whether or not that rotation will hold out. Last year I told you they were short on rotation all year long, and they were ultimately short on rotation help. Frankie Montas trade obviously didn't work, and I just wonder about the back half of that rotation. And again, is Garrett Cole still Garrett Cole? As far as the bullpen goes, they were bitten by the injury bug in the second half of the year last year. I wonder about their ability to stay healthy as well. They didn't really invest in the bullpen arms back there. There's just some issues at the back half that I wonder about. But we'll see what happens with them. Now we'll get to your favorite team, Mark, the Toronto Blue Jays. Last year they were my pick to go to the World Series, and I think if they had better production in the first half of the year, I think they would have had a lot better chance to get there. Their rotation didn't necessarily perform as well as hoped. They did add to that rotation this year. Looking at their lineup, I don't think it's as good of a lineup as they had last year as far as overall production, but I think it's going to be a more balanced lineup, and therefore I think a more productive lineup on the whole. I wonder if they're going to be able to keep that production more consistent now that they've got a little bit more balanced lineup. The big trade that they made with the Arizona Diamondbacks, bringing in Dalton Varsho. Of course, they now have Whit Merrifield now for a full year. They brought in Brandon Belt to be a DH. They got Kevin Kiermaier in the outfield. They pretty much kept their team intact. The one addition they did bring in to the rotation, Chris Bassett, probably the most consistent starting pitcher last year for the New York Mets. He should be a nice addition for them. Overall, this is a very solid team. Do I think they're going to, knock the socks off of anybody this year? No, because I think everybody expected them to be significantly better last year, and they underperformed. And so I still think they're going to be right there for the division crown. The question is, are they going to have enough juice in one, that bullpen, and as two, how's that lineup ultimately going to work out? Is this lineup now having a more balanced approach the better team, or should they have held on to Teoscar Hernandez and Lourdes Gurriel, pieces like that were highly productive, but again, they were very right-handed. They needed to balance it out by bringing in some left-handed hitters. Your only concern with the Blue Jays is if Barrios and Kikuchi can bounce back. I wouldn't say the Blue Jays are necessarily counting on much from Kikuchi. I think they like him for more of a depth piece in their rotation right now. Now, Barrios, I do think, is going to have a bounce-back year. His numbers were still pretty good last year. His issue was with the long ball. Hard hit contact, getting the ball up, missing his location. If he's able to get back on track with that, they've got him signed for the long term, of course. If he's able to get his location and command back in tow, then the Blue Jays have a stellar starting staff. You're talking about Alek Manoah. You're talking about Chris Bassett, Kevin Gausman, Barrios. These are guys, say, a year ago, we would have been talking about being a 1 or a 2 in anybody's starting rotation, and you have 4 of those guys right there. Kikuchi, again, is your number 5. I think they could still bring in somebody else, or even somebody on their roster right now I like is Mitch White. I wonder if he ultimately takes some time there as well in that 5th spot. They did make the trade to bring in some bullpen help, a couple of different trades. They have Bass, Simber, Meza now. They have Swanson they made the trade with the Mariners to send Teoscar Hernandez to bring in Eric Swanson. I wonder about his ability year to year to keep that level of production. That's why I questioned the trade for Teoscar Hernandez at the time. Was that the right move for the Blue Jays to sell a very productive outfield bat? Somebody who, yes, had 1 year left on his contract, but still was an absolute gem of a piece in the outfield for the Blue Jays. I just wonder if that was the right move for them. But the bullpen on paper looks to be a little bit better, so we'll see how things go for them. But I do agree your weak spot is probably in that 4-5 spot in that rotation, and then again the lineup, how it ultimately balances out. Last team in the American League East is the Tampa Bay Rays. Everybody seems to forget about them, but they've been one of the most productive teams in all of Major League Baseball. They are the 3rd most winning team over the last 5 years, I believe. The only teams in front of them are the Dodgers and the Astros. That's where the Rays have been. They're a very productive team. They rely a lot on platoons, but now they're starting to get a little bit more superstar-level production out of this lineup. Wander Franco has turned himself into a superstar. Arozarena has certainly got his clutch moments. And then, of course, they have a ton of great starting pitching. They got it all locked up as well. They stole Zach Eflin away from the Philadelphia Phillies. They have a decent bullpen as well, but nobody that's really going to knock your socks off. But they just find the right mix year after year and make this thing go. They're going to be right there, I believe, at the top of the division once again. Do I think they're going to run away with the division? No. I still think they're going to probably be around that 90-win mark. Wait until later on in the video. We'll give you our predictions for the American League East. But let's move on to the American League Central. We'll start with the Chicago White Sox, the team I picked to win this division last year, and they kind of fell on their face, did not perform very well, and I just wonder about their ability to, with that lineup, to continue to produce. Now, of course, last year they had injury issues all up and down in that lineup, in that rotation. They just continually were hit by the injury bug. Now, this year they were without Liam Hendricks in the bullpen. However, their bullpen should be pretty deep even without Hendricks. There was some discussion about there possibly being some redundancy at the closer position and then possibly even moving Liam Hendricks before the diagnosis came out for him. Obviously, they couldn't trade him after that came out, so they just kind of had to stick with what they had. They did a nice job improving that rotation as well, but they should have nice improvements across this roster just from bounce-back seasons. Even if they don't get every single player to have a bounce-back season, just having healthy players on their roster is a significant improvement from what they had last year. Just looking at it here, Andrew Vaughn takes over at first base for Jose Abreu. He should be a very nice piece for them there. Gets him back to a more defensive position for him. He's not a great defender in the outfield, which is one of the issues I had with him starting out there last year. Eloy Jimenez is no longer going to be in the outfield either, so your outfield defense is significantly better, making your pitching staff that much better. Eloy Jimenez, if healthy and is able to produce like he's capable of, you're talking about an absolute masher at that DH spot. Tim Anderson, his leadership abilities, unquestionable there. Yohan Moncada, kind of an up and down player for me. I just wonder about his fit long term on this roster. And again, with this team, it's all about bounce back seasons. He was one of the guys that I think should be one of the guys you should be counting on. But again, the question is, can you count on a guy like Moncada? Same thing for Luis Robert, who has the potential to be an MVP candidate, but can he stay on the field enough? They did bring in their one big acquisition from the lineup perspective anyway, would be Andrew Benintendi. He's going to fill that spot anyway, left by Jose Abreu in the lineup per se, but he's more of a contact hitter. Had a nice bounce back year anyway with the Royals and Royals and I can't remember the team he finished the season with. Yankees. But again, will they have the bounce back seasons that they require? Oscar Colas got the call up this year. He's going to break camp with the White Sox. As far as their rotation goes, the back half of the rotation is probably the biggest question mark for me, whether it be Mike Clevenger and the off-the-field concerns that he has over the offseason, Michael Kopech and his inability to be able to miss bats so far this spring. But as far as the top of the rotation, Dylan Cease, Lance Lynn, and Lucas Giolito should be pretty solid as well. Welcome back, Sub-Zero. Welcome back, Jose. We're going to be, in case you guys are just joining us, we're going to be doing quite a bit of baseball coverage for you this year. Just in the next 4 days, we're going to be doing 4 baseball games for you. One on opening day, the 9 o'clock game, the Angels versus the A's. On Friday, we're going to be doing, I'm trying to read my board across the room. I think it's San Diego versus, I can't see the name. Is it Arizona? Anyway, Colorado, whoever it is, the San Diego game. And then we are going to be doing on Sunday the Yankees and the Giants and the Cleveland Guardians versus the Seattle Mariners. We will not be doing a game on Saturday. Got a lot going on that day, but we'll be doing pretty much a game almost every night for you guys for the next month. So make sure you join us here. Enjoy baseball games live with us here. In case you guys missed that last year, we had a lot of success with that. A lot of you guys joined us during that time period. So thank you guys for joining us and coming back and sticking around and showing your support. We really do appreciate it. As far as the bullpen, as I mentioned, they still have a pretty solid bullpen there, even without the likes of a guy like Liam Hendricks. They have they have Jake Diekman's back there now. Joe Kelly's back for another year. Ronaldo Lopez is more of their back-end guy as well. They have Kendall Graveman. They have a really solid bullpen. The White Sox should be pretty solid as long as they get bounce backs in that lineup. Moving on to the Cleveland Guardians, who kind of overperformed all projections last year. They more of a hit-to-contact type of a team. They're really not going to sit there and try to, out-slug you, but they did add some more pop to your lineup as well. I really do like the addition of a guy like Josh Bell to this lineup. I like the addition of Mike Zunino. And, of course, they still have a guy like Josh Naylor to bring some thump. The ability for the Guardians to be able to keep Andres Jimenez and Jose Ramirez on long-term deals, contracts friendly to the Guardians, speaks volumes for what this team is capable of doing. I wonder about their ability to lock up a couple more people as well. But this is a really solid club all the way around. I just wonder about their ability to stay healthy in that rotation now that you have Tristan McKenzie out for a couple months. Shane Bieber missed some time last year. They had some poor performance at the very back half of that rotation last year. But they, year after year, still seem to put up good rotations, and I'm expecting no different this year. Guardians should be right there for the taking for that division. But yes, Rangers versus Phillies tomorrow. Jacob deGrom's debut. Trey Turner's debut for the Phillies should be pretty good. The Royals, a team on the rise anyway, have some nice pieces coming up. Of course, they have the veteran there in Sal Perez. Of course, they have Melendez, kind of the other catcher there right now. Bobby Witt's kind of taken a step forward. Pasquantino as well has taken a nice step forward. But this is another team that's still going to be relying quite a bit on internal improvements. They're not going to be a contender for this division. I think they're going to be just trying to see if they can get more consistent performances out of this rotation more than anything else, because this rotation is where it's going to begin and end for the rebuild here for the Royals. Is this group going to be able to hold together? And they brought in a couple of good veterans to be able to at least give them some innings while these young guys aren't forced to into spots where they can't perform. Guys like Jordan Lyles and Zach Greinke are there to kind of give them some stability in that rotation. Now, are they going to, have sub 3 earned run averages for this team? Maybe, maybe not. I don't think that's really why they're there. I think they're there to try to give some knowledge to this team. One of the most underrated things about Zach Greinke is his ability to relay what's needed from the front office to players on the field. And he's going to be a future GM in this league. I just think Zach Greinke is that smart of a ball player. Think of Chris Young when he was playing to now Chris Young, the GM of the Texas Rangers. That's going to be Zach Greinke once he retires, and look for that to happen at some point. But the Royals are all about internal development this year, about that starting staff. So I wouldn't worry too much about the position player prospects for the Royals right now. It's more about that starting staff being able to get some longevity out of that rotation. Is Bubek going to take a step forward this year? Singer, is he going to take a step forward this year? Keller's been around for a while now. Is he going to be able to take that next step? And then, of course, they're starting pitching in the minors. They made the acquisition for Aroldis Chapman in the bullpen. I think he's going to be flipped at the deadline no matter what happens. But we'll see what happens. The one thing I did notice on here is they do have Amir Garrett on this team as well, kind of going back to the days of the Cincinnati Reds bullpen. Both of those guys have seen better days, and I just wonder about their bullpen long term to be able to hold up to save those games for those young starters. But they're going to have to figure things out on the fly this season for the Royals and just see if they can get some pieces for the future to build upon. Bobby Witt Jr. is one of them. Pasquantino seems to be one of them. Melendez seems to be one of them. Olivares seems to be a guy that you could possibly count on. And then they've got some decent bench bats that they can count on. But that rotation is what they're going to have to focus with next. Next team is going to be the Minnesota Twins. Now, the Twins, of course, had one of the most curious off seasons. They traded away their best hitter, arguably, in Luis Arraez to the Miami Marlins for another starting pitcher in Pablo Lopez. They have a number of starters in that rotation that are probably number 2s, number 3s on other teams, but they're counting on them to be their 1 through 5. So they might have the most consistent starting staff as far as the ability to have the same level of production night in and night out, as far as the same type of stuff, same caliber, same expectation. But they don't necessarily have anybody who's going to have that really high ceiling, somebody who's going to have that sub-2 ERA, somebody who's going to have that 20-plus win season, somebody who's going to have that 200 strikeout season. I don't think that really happens with this rotation. It's going to be more about consistency day to day with this team. The other thing is they were able to keep Carlos Correa after knee issues popped up with the physicals with the Giants and the Mets. Now, they had their chance to be able to keep that player and just get the deal done and just agree to it. The Twins already had him in-house and said, hey, we're fine with your knee. We'll give you 6 years if you want to go ahead and get your higher AAV. And he said, okay, I'll do it. And he has another chance to take another big bite at the apple after his age 33 season. So things are looking good for Minnesota as far as their rotation. They did bring in Joey Gallo, kind of a 1-year risk type of a deal here. Not too much of a risk for them, honestly. They got some good defensive players there now. Michael Taylor is going to be in the outfield for them. Byron Buxton, when he's able to stay healthy, is one of the best players in all of Major League Baseball. But again, you might be able to count on him for, at best, 80 to 100 games, honestly. If you're expecting more than that with his track record of injuries, I think you're fooling yourself. And then, of course, they brought in Christian Vasquez to handle the catching. They weren't really happy with any of their 3 catchers last year. Hard to blame them. They couldn't really get too much consistency, so hopefully he solidifies that spot for the Twins. Should we Phillies fans be concerned about the Phillies not being able to get an extension with Nola? I feel if we let him hit free agency, Phillies will lose an important part of the team. I wouldn't be worried too much about it. I mean, it's Dombrowski there. I think that the Phillies should very easily be able to keep him in-house. They have the money to be able to go out there and do it. It's just a matter of hammering out the deal that they want to get done. I wouldn't worry too much about it for the Phillies. But as far as the rest of this roster goes for the Twins, their bullpen seems to be pretty solid as well. The last season's acquisition of Jorge Lopez at the deadline is going to lengthen out that bullpen a little bit for them. They do need to get a nice year out of Kenta Maeda, I believe. Maile should have a nice bounce-back season after he struggled after the trade from the Reds. But 1 through 5 in that rotation, they seem pretty solid. But we'll see if they can stay healthy and keep that consistency, because after the deadline, that rotation just imploded. That was their struggle last year. I think they should have a better season going forward, especially with the addition of Pablo Lopez at the top. One team I missed there was the Detroit Tigers. This is one team that I think still kind of stuck in the middle as far as where they're going to go. They have players on their roster that are ready to win now and players that they expect to have solid production. Looking at players like Javier Baez, looking at guys like The starting pitcher, Eduardo Rodriguez. They brought back Matthew Boyd. They have players on their roster right now that have been around for a while. Jonathan Scope. Then they have younger players like Spencer Torkelson, Riley Green. They have a decent hitter anyway. Austin Meadows, one of the higher prospects from a few years ago that's not really panned out to his prospect status, but still a very good player. When you look at this team on paper, this is a team that should, a couple of years ago, at least be in contention for the AL Central, seeing as how there's no behemoth in the Central. But this team has poor production from Javier Baez. He looks like one of the worst contracts in baseball last year. Riley Green, while he's a great talent, you got to wonder about what he has around him. Torkelson was supposed to come up and be great. He did not, kind of fell on his face last year. This is going to be the final season for Miguel Cabrera. You got to think they want to perform very well for him in his final year. Meadows should be a nice pickup for them. The trade that they made with the Phillies for their reliever brought in some nice pieces to help them out in Maton and Vierling and Haas, or they have Haas anyway. But overall, this is a team that's kind of stuck in the middle. And when you're talking about teams that, you're trying to get either the top pick in the draft or you're trying to win the World Series, you don't want to be one of those teams that's vying for a wild card, don't get it, and then you're stuck picking at pick number 10 in the draft year after year after year after year. And that's where I think the Tigers are ultimately going to end up being. They're going to be bad enough to be out of the playoffs, but they're not going to be so bad to where they're going to get one of the top picks in the draft, and that's where I think the Tigers are going to be. Welcome back, Clay. I think they're just a team that's going to be stuck in the middle, and unfortunately, it's their decision to spend money on guys like Baez and Rodriguez, who are going to win you a game here or there, but at the same time, they're not going to allow you to be very successful long term. But they really don't have much around Riley Green at this point as far as future assets to build around. That's why I agree with you, Clay. They absolutely should be a team that rebuilds. You got to wonder if they're able to get some type of resurgent season out of Javier Baez, how quickly do they try to peddle that contract to literally anybody else. But that's kind of your AL Central for you. Let's go to the AL West. We'll start out with the Houston Astros. Of course, another fantastic season for them, but another season where they see major pieces of this organization leave. This time they see Justin Verlander walk out the door, and they're going to be relying on some rotation pieces that they haven't had to rely on before. Valdez and Javier are at the top of the rotation, but they no longer have the cover of Cole or Verlander at the top to take the pressure off of them. The face of this rotation is probably going to be Lance McCullers just because of his veteran leadership, etc. But Valdez is going to be the best performer out of this group. I wonder if this team starts to struggle out of the gate, which I think is a very likely option anyway, especially without having Jose Altuve to begin the season. And with a decent schedule to begin the year as well, we could see the Astros fall to maybe third or fourth in this division after a month of baseball without having Jose Altuve. But looking at their roster right now, bringing in Jose Abreu is a very big piece for them. He's going to be Mr. Consistency in that lineup for them. Really like the addition there. He's kind of the Michael Brantley approach, if you will. I really like the addition there. They have Bregman, of course, back. They have Tucker still. Another year of Jeremy Pena after winning the American League Championship Series MVP, World Series MVP, I believe. He was absolutely dynamic. He's going to be great for the Astros in year 2, I believe. Alvarez is another MVP candidate for them. I still think they have some holes in the outfield, and now they have a hole at second base with Altuve being out for at least a month, maybe 2. The rotation, as I mentioned, they have some decent starters. Don't get me wrong. They have some really nice options there. Valdez, Javier, Garcia, Urquidy, and Brown. You're also looking at McCullers as well is still there. I just wonder about their ability to handle the dog days of summer. Are they going to be able to hold up through 162? I think if they get to the postseason and they don't have to worry about, say, answering questions from the media about how you're going to be able to overcome a tough stretch of games, those kinds of things, then I think they'll be fine. But it's the 162 I worry about with this rotation. You're also counting on a young guy in Hunter Brown in this rotation as well. Just wonder about where they're ultimately headed overall. The bullpen still looks pretty stacked. They have some pretty good options back there. I really like what they have back there in the back end. This lineup with Jose Abreu back, or Jose Altuve back, should be pretty darn good. The addition of Jose Abreu is very solid for them. They should win this division. I'm still predicting them to win this division. But I also have to put on this caution for you guys that Jose Altuve is such an important piece of what they do, really sets the table for what they're going to do. You saw what happened in the postseason when he started to have his struggles, what this lineup really lacked in there. Now, of course, he started to turn it on as the final couple series kind of went on, but you really saw without his production in the lineup what they're missing. And I just wonder long term if he's required to miss a month, if he has a setback, those type of issues, where this team ultimately ends up finishing. Let's look at the LA Angels. This seems to be everybody's dark horse pick anyway to win the division or at least make the wild card, and that's because of Shohei Ohtani. I wonder if he's able to even finish the season with the LA Angels, primarily because the owner stepped back and said, hey, I'm not going to sell the team right now, and I think that's primarily because of all the questions he was probably getting from all the potential owners about Shohei Ohtani. Hey, are you going to lock him up? Am I going to have him on this team? How valuable a piece is he to this organization? How many pieces could you get back in trade? Is it more valuable to keep him? Is it more valuable to trade him? What questions these are going to be for the Angels to answer. And until they answer them, that's going to be the thing for the Angels. And though I do like the additions they made to their lineup, bringing in guys like Gio Urshela, Brandon Drury, Hunter Renfroe, some guys that have a higher floor but a lower ceiling. Some guys that are going to bring some consistency, professionalism, that they don't have to rely on guys like Joe Adell or players like that to kind of come through for them. They did improve that starting staff as well, bringing in Tyler Anderson from the Dodgers. Got to wonder if his production is going to stay the same after only 1 year of success with the Dodgers. Maybe he's able to replicate that with the LA Angels. But that lineup should be a little bit better. That rotation is still my worry for them long term. Are they going to be able to pitch with all the other teams in that division? The Mariners arguably have a top 5 rotation in the game. The Rangers have a top 5, or arguably one of the top 5 rotations in the game. The Astros, when healthy, they have some of the top starters in the division, but are they going to be able to answer the bell for a full season? They're no slouch as far as a rotation either. That's 3 tough rotations in a division. When you're looking at your starting staff led by Shohei Ohtani, then you have Anderson, and then maybe on the rest of it. I just worry about their ability to hold up for 162, but that's kind of the weak point for me. Now, as far as their bullpen, it looks a little bit stronger, especially with the addition of Matt Moore, one of the best left-handed relievers last year for the Rangers. Honestly, one of the best left-handed relievers in all of baseball. Their bench is a little bit better for the Angels. So, again, this lineup should be much better for the Angels, but I wonder about their ability to perform for 162 games in that rotation. So we'll see what ultimately ends up happening. How about Rhys Hoskins? Do you see him coming back in 24 with the Phillies? Is he a free agent after the season? I think Nola stays. Rise signs somewhere else. Or Rhys signs somewhere else. I think Hoskins' value is going to drop so much because of the injury that he's probably going to stay on a 1 or a 2 year deal with the Phillies and then try to cash in free agency. But I think the injury actually helps the Phillies to keep him a little bit longer. But do I see him on another team long term? Absolutely. But I think he might try to rebuild his value a little bit with the Phillies next year with a full year healthy. But that's kind of where things are with the Angels. We'll check on the Oakland A's. This is a team that's not going to have a chance to win the division. This is a team that's all about future development. They have some nice pieces on their roster now. They brought in Aledmus Diaz. They brought in players like Jesus Aguilar. They have some nice veteran pieces to kind of complement their young core. But I wonder about their ability to really put together a lineup 1 through 9. Shea Langeliers is going to have a fantastic season. Think of Adley Rutschman for the Orioles is what I think Shea Langeliers could mean to the A's by the end of the season. Now, do I think they're going to be in the same spot? Absolutely not. I think the Orioles are going to be wild card division contenders, while the A's are going to be, bottom dwellers in the American League West. I think they're very clearly in that spot. Rotation issues galore for them. Bullpen issues as well. They did try to bring in some pieces to solidify that. Urias Familia, etc., Trevor May. But I still wonder about their ability to win games day in and day out. Sandoval and Detmer's getting slept on. I mean, I don't know how much you can sleep on guys that have been touted to us before. I'll put it that way. I mean, sure they have their potential. Sure they have some ability. The question is, how consistent is that ability? That's where I think the Angels really lack. The Seattle Mariners. Another really improved team last year. American League Rookie of the Year, Julio Rodriguez. Should expect a nice bounce back year again, anyway, from Eugenio Suarez. He had a nice year, anyway, for the Mariners in his first season. They improved that outfield, anyway, with Teoscar Hernandez. Really like that addition. A.J. Pollock to be a more professional hitter there at your DH spot. Colton Wong solidifying second base for you. Really like how things are stacking up for you there. Tom Murphy, your catcher. Cal Raleigh, etc. You have a nice tandem there. The rotation is probably one of the top 5, as I mentioned in the game, with Castillo, Ray, Gilbert, Gonzalez, Kirby, and then you have some options back there as well to kind of fill out that rotation should you have some losses there. Bullpen, I wonder about their ability in their bullpen just a little bit. Not too much, though. I still think this is a very dynamic team as far as the pitching side. Their lineup is also a lot better with the additions that they made to kind of solidify what they got. Mariners are going to be a force in the American League West, so keep your eyes peeled there. Do I like them better than the Angels? You betcha. Now, of course, I've told you guys before, my favorite team is the Texas Rangers, so kind of take this with a grain of salt. Got a lot of news for you guys on this one. Of course, they made the big additions of bringing in an entirely new starting rotation. First and foremost, Jacob deGrom is now the #1 starter for the Texas Rangers. Number 2 is going to be Nathan Eovaldi. Number 3, Martin Perez is back on the qualifying offer. Number 4 is John Gray, who, when healthy last year, was very productive, had a very good second half of the season, and he should be back to being probably a number 2 type starter, number 3 type starter at when he's on his game anyway for the Texas Rangers. That's what you're going to have probably as your number 4, and then Andrew Heaney as your 5th starter. Andrew Heaney's numbers last year for the Dodgers were impeccable. Of course, you have to worry about injury issues pretty much across this entire rotation. That's why they pretty much have a second starting rotation at the AAA level. You're talking about guys in their bullpen right now that they could turn to. Dane Dunning has been lights out this spring. He could be an easy option for them. They have Glenn Otto, who was put on the 60-day IL. He's nothing major, but something that's going to keep him sidelined for a while. Jake Odorizzi, another addition that they made to their starting staff. He was going to be a long man in the bullpen until this team kind of ramped up their arms as far as being able to throw 100 pitches in a game, those kinds of things like all other teams do as well. But Odorizzi has some arm fatigue. He's going to start the season on the 60-day IL as well, but nothing really long-term that's going to scare away the Rangers as far as their ability to get him on the field for the season. You're talking about probably getting him back around June. That way, when you do have a lineup, a rotation issue, that you can easily go to one of them. Cole Ragans is going to break camp with this team. He was fantastic for the Rangers in spring training. He's going to be the long man out of the bullpen. You can probably start him on days when you want to give a guy like deGrom a day off, or you want to give Heaney an extra spot or skip a start, stuff like that. They have tons of depth. And then, of course, in their minor league level, they have guys like Cole Winn knocking on the door. They have a number of options to go with the Rangers as far as their starting staff, and they had none of those last year. That's the big improvement for the Rangers is their starting staff. Now, the one thing I do have an issue with for the Rangers is that they told us they were going to add a middle-of-the-order bat. They did not do so this offseason. That is the one thing they did not hold their word to. And I think that's because they found opportunity to really rebuild this entire starting staff. I think they took the money that they were going to take for that middle-of-the-order bat and gave it to a guy like Eovaldi. They went out and got Heaney early on, remember. Eovaldi hung around on the free agent market. They saw an opportunity and brought him in. I didn't think they targeted him from the beginning, but I think they saw an opportunity to really solidify their starting rotation, and they took it. That's why they took the money I think they were going to give to that middle-of-the-order bat to that starting staff. So kind of take your money, where it goes, and you see what's left in that starting lineup anyway. You're looking at Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, of course, as your 1 and 2 best players on the team as far as the lineup. You're looking at guys like Nathaniel Lowe, won the Silver Slugger Award in the American League for first base. Josh Young has been absolutely tearing the cover off the ball when he couldn't hit the ball out of the infield, it seemed like, at points last year. Really struggled with contact last year. That seems to have solved over the winter break. And now you bring in guys like Bruce Bochy to be your manager. You bring in Mike Maddox to handle your pitching staff. Things look up if you're a Texas Ranger fan. Now, as I mentioned, I am a Rangers fan, so I'm going to try to temper my expectations for what this team is going to look like. Issues we saw in this team from the lineup, a lot of swing and miss with guys like Adolis Garcia. Jonah Heim, over the course of 162 games, kind of wore down in the second half of the season. He was no longer a top 5 catcher in the American League like he was in the first half. He finished as probably a top 10 catcher in the second half. That's one issue I worry about with the Rangers. They still have Mitch Garver there, but he has not had a great spring. He didn't stay healthy last year. He wasn't necessarily the bat they hoped for in the trade with the Minnesota Twins. They still have Sam Huff in the minors. I wonder if they're going to be able to get him enough at bats at the major league level, so that's why he's in the minors right now. If you have an injury or poor production from Garver or Heim doesn't start out as well, we could see Sam Huff come up. But as far as this team overall on the lineup side, they missed bringing in a big-time outfield bat. Now, the guy they did bring in, Robbie Grossman, has had a very nice spring for them. They've had some internal production also happen from a guy like Ezekiel Duran. He's absolutely been fantastic and absolutely earned his spot on the active roster for the Rangers. Leody Taveras is going to start the season on the injured list for them in center. That means you're going to probably slide Garcia into center. You're probably going to put Grossman in right, and you're going to give every day at bats to Duran. I absolutely love that for a long-term perspective from the Rangers. Getting Duran consistent at bats is absolutely vital to getting him on the active roster. I think if they weren't able to get him regular, consistent at bats, we could have seen him possibly being held in the minors because they want to get him those consistent at bats. So keep your eyes peeled for what happens with the Rangers. The one issue, of course, I have with this team, besides the missing of the middle of the order bat, is going to be that bullpen. They absolutely needed to bring in a closer and did not. They brought in Ian Kennedy, who they had success with before, but I was hoping they'd go out there and get a guy like Liam Hendricks before his diagnosis came down, or a Bednar from the Pirates. Somebody like that to really lock things down for this rotation, especially after you completely did the work of rebuilding that. Great job. But then you missed the second half of the puzzle. You didn't bring in Kenley Jansen. You didn't bring another proven closer. You're going to count on internal production from guys like Brock Burke, who was fantastic last year, but you're asking him to do something new as far as closed games. Jose Leclerc, who's closed games before, but has since, of course, had Tommy John. He missed some time, took some time to get back to his regular delivery, all those kinds of things. But I think Mike Maddox to kind of shepherd the bullpen should be a lot better for this team overall. This is a team that's probably going to see the biggest jump in their win total from one year to the next. So keep your eyes peeled for what the Rangers are going to do. So that's kind of your American League West. Let's go to the NL East. We'll start with the Philadelphia Phillies. Now we got some Phillies fans here, so we'll kind of start with them. Of course, you got to worry about the injuries first and foremost with Rhys Hoskins, Bryce Harper, etc. But bringing in Trey Turner is going to do wonders for this lineup. He is probably going to be the MVP in the National League, in my opinion, just because of how dynamic he is as an overall player. His production as far as power numbers have certainly skyrocketed. We saw it on display at the World Baseball Classic. I think everybody is sleeping on the ability of Trey Turner to mash the baseball. And then, of course, when he gets on base, now that the base running rules are a little different, throws over to first are different, bags are bigger. We're talking about a guy who could steal 50, 60, 70 bases with ease in the NL East. And this is a team that really lacked that speed element last year. He's going to do wonderful things for that lineup as far as being able to take the pressure off of some of those hitters in that lineup and then allow the pitcher to focus on him on base and allow them to maybe get a pitch that's right down the middle that the pitcher misses location on and really have a chance to drive the ball. So I really like what ultimately happens here with the Phillies. The question is now going to be what happens with the health of Hoskins and Harper, etc. Are they going to be able to get healthy in time to really make a serious run for the division? That's the question. And of course, are they going to be able to stay healthy with the rest of their players that are already on their roster? As far as the pitching staff goes, really like the top of their rotation. As far as Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, I like the addition of Taijuan Walker to kind of lengthen things out. But as far as the back half of that rotation, that's the question marks I have. Are they going to be able to put it together 1 through 5, or are they still going to have rotation issues like they did at the back half of the rotation last year with Kyle Gibson underperforming, with Noah Syndergaard having to be brought in from the Angels, etc. That's the one issue I have with the Phillies is their back half of the rotation. I think they could have added another veteran arm to really give them more stability there. As far as the bullpen, they did a nice job bringing in some nice pieces back there. Gregory Soto, Craig Kimbrell should also give them some options to close. That way they're not having to rely on Jose Alvarado every single big at-bat. Really like what that's going to do for them as far as their rotation goes. Maybe not have to rely on Zach Wheeler going 7. Maybe they can ask him to go 6 and say, all right, turn it over to the bullpen. We'll give you Soto, Kimbrell, and Alvarado for the 7th, 8th, and 9th, or whatever you want to do. I don't know about that for Hoskins, but Harper is kind of the heart and soul of that lineup. You just saw the instant reaction to that lineup whenever he got in there. Nick Castellanos should have a bounce back year, I believe, with the Phillies, and we'll see what ultimately happens for them. But really like what the Phillies did bringing in Trey Turner. I think that's the biggest impact on this division, honestly. Trey Turner's impact on that Philly lineup is going to be chef's kiss amazing. Trey Turner is going to be that special of a player. In case you guys missed it, my pick for MVP, Trey Turner in the National League. Let's go to the New York Mets, one of the teams that's, well, I say one of the teams, the team that spent the most money in the offseason. They spread money around like a madman, and they got a lot of production for it, don't get me wrong. You're looking at pieces like Brandon Nimmo is back, which they absolutely had to get. Starling Marte has been knocking the cover off the ball pretty much for the last couple of years now. He's back there. They had a chance to bring in Carlos Correa, but they still have Eduardo Escobar there at third. They're going to have, was it Beatty? Is it Beatty that I'm thinking of? The third baseman who's taking all the at-bats. I can't remember. But they got some good options there at third base. The one big addition they made from an offensive perspective would be Tommy Pham, I guess, if you could call it a big addition. The lineup is the one issue I had with this team going into the offseason. Of course, all the other holes that they were going to have due to free agency. But they didn't really bring in a bat to really solidify their lineup. That's what really faltered for them in September. They were the best team in the division probably April through August. And then in September, it just didn't really get it together. As far as the rotation, I have some major question marks with this rotation. Max Scherzer, for the last 2 years, he hasn't been able to finish the season strong for whatever the case may be. Whether it be dead arm in Game 6 of the NLDS with the Dodgers, whether it be last year where he just got lit up in the postseason game. Whatever the case may be, you're not expecting that to happen, I guess, again. But we're starting to see a little bit of a more of a consistent lack of being able to finish the season, if you will, for Max Scherzer. Now, do I think has the ability to get right back on that horse and get right back out there and do it all over again and be the Max Scherzer we all think he is? Absolutely. But you got to leave that in the back of your mind as, hey, the last 2 years have not finished well for Max Scherzer. Then you look at Justin Verlander, 1 year removed from missing an entire season due to an injury, comes back last year, has 175 innings last year, pitched to a 1.75 ERA, got the American League Cy Young. Great season for Justin Verlander, bounce back season and all that. But he is, 40 years old now, close to it? I mean, we're talking about a guy that's a lot older than the guy that they just got rid of, Jacob deGrom. Older guys usually don't heal as well as younger guys. And I see all the New York media saying, Justin Verlander's a great leader. Jacob deGrom wasn't. Justin Verlander's a better pitcher. Jacob deGrom, well, great. He had all these other issues. Jacob deGrom has all these nagging issues. Well, you're talking about Justin Verlander, who's missed almost as much time as Jacob deGrom over the past 3 seasons, and you're saying that this guy's significantly better. Yet the guy himself, Justin Verlander, says he's not pitching like himself. He doesn't feel like himself so far this spring. Leaves you with some question marks if you're a Mets fan, especially with the fact that you're spending more money on Verlander this year and next than the Rangers will be spending on Jacob deGrom, who's 6 years younger and they have him locked up for 5 years. If he's able to stay healthy, that contract looks fantastic. While you still have to worry about injury issues for both, I would have taken the bet on Jacob deGrom as far as the ability to stay healthy because he is younger. He's only 33, 34 years old. Verlander's 40 and change. That would have been the biggest difference for me right there. And then just looking at the production, very similar talent. You would have had your own homegrown guy in Jacob deGrom, whereas Verlander, you had to count on him leaving the Houston Astros, not going to a team like the Dodgers. A lot of hoops he had to jump through to get Verlander, and now you're counting on him behind Scherzer to be the 1-2 in that rotation. Be curious to see if he's able to get back to his form even from spring training, and then if he's able to maintain that level of production that he had last year. I still think he's going to be fantastic. I think Scherzer's going to be fantastic. Don't get me wrong. But I think there's some more question marks than people want to admit with this New York Mets rotation. Third on their rotation, of course, is going to be Kodai Senga. They brought him in from the international leagues. He's been fantastic for them on the international side. The question will be, how does his game translate to the American game? And I still think he's going to be great, but there is still that caveat of how good is he going to be really. They got him at a discount because they had issues with his physical as well. Less reported than it was with the Carlos Correa deal, of course, but they were able to get their deal done. Now, of course, will this rotation hold up? You have to worry about the long-term ability of Carlos Carrasco to stay healthy, David Peterson, etc. at the back half of that rotation. And just overall, there's a lot of risk with this team as far as injuries. We just saw it with their closer spot. Edwin Diaz, the most dominant closer possibly in baseball history, goes down. He's going to miss likely the entire season. There's some talk he could be back in September, October. I'll believe it when I see it. I wouldn't count on him if you're a Mets fan. But things right now in your bullpen still look a little bit better. You brought in Brooks Raley. David Robertson's there now. Ottavino's back. You should still have a decent rotation with Verlander, Scherzer, Senga, etc. But you didn't really necessarily improve your staff. You're talking about Bassett is gone. DeGrom is gone. Walker is gone. And you're talking about replacing him with Verlander, Senga, and Carrasco. I think there's more holes on this team than Mets fans want to admit. And they spent a ton of money just to keep the roster the way it is. That's all I'll say about that. Now, the Atlanta Braves, once one of my favorite teams of my youth anyway, they've certainly locked up all of their talent. They have a ton of pieces already locked up on their roster. This team is a team that's ready to win and win for years to come. Matt Olson trade looks fantastic now, especially when you see the failure of a prospect like Christian Pache. Sure, you'd love to have kept a guy like Shane Langeliers, but now you have Sean Murphy as your catcher, locked up with d'Arnaud. Things look better, or things look pretty solid there. The one issue you still have is going to be at your shortstop spot now that you don't have Dansby Swanson. The guy that you were counting on was Vaughn Grissom. He's going to start the season in the minors because he wasn't able to hack it so far in spring training. So he'll probably be back probably by the end of April, beginning of May. But you're talking about breaking camp with Orlando Arcia as probably your shortstop right now. And the Braves have done this before, but they need really solid infield defense. And Arcia, I think, gives that to them right now. Their lineup is still very solid. Michael Harris, the NL Rookie of the Year, was very good. Acuna, a full year of him, should really give them some production as well. The NL East is going to be very competitive between those three teams, Mets, Phillies, and Braves. As far as the rotation, they still have Max Fried at the top of the rotation. There was some talk that he could be moved either this year or next because of contract situations, etc. We'll see what ultimately happens there, but I don't think they're going to be moving their ace anytime soon. Strider, another full year of him in the major leagues. We'll see if the league adjusts to him a little bit. Their bench is still pretty decent. I like what they got there. Their bullpen, they have some internal candidates to kind of see some improvement, and then you have some really nice pieces going for you. Kyle Wright's going to start the season on IL. It sounds like Iglesias, their closer, is going to start on the IL. Anderson's going to sounds like he's not going to start the season with the club. Got to wonder about their back half of the rotation early on if they're able to right the ship in May and June. But I still really like where this team is ultimately headed long term. The Miami Marlins, another team that's seen some decent improvement in recent years. They made some additions to their starting lineup now. One of the best contact hitters in all of baseball, Luis Arraez, showed some pop in the World Baseball Classic, playing in his new home ballpark in Miami. They brought in Gene Segura. They have Avisail Garcia. They have Jorge Soler. They've got some regular MLB consistent players there in their lineup now. The question will be, can that starting staff hold together? Their starting staff's been their glue for the last couple of years. They sent out Pablo Lopez. They brought in Johnny Cueto, who was fantastic for the White Sox last year. But the question is he able to do it once again? Now, he is 37 years old. Got to wonder how many more years he's going to be able to put it together. They brought in Yuli Gurriel. So things as far as the lineup overall look good. Their rotation is pretty solid, of course, with the NL Cy Young winner, Sandy Alcantara. Their bullpen, they lost a number of pieces back there. They brought in Matt Barnes as well to kind of fill in some spots. This is a team in flux, but their lineup should be better than it has been. This is the first chance, anyway, for the Marlins to really prove themselves as far as being able to develop position player talent. Now they have consistent major leaguers in their lineup. If they call up somebody that's ready to play in the majors, now they have the lineup around them to protect that young player and see if they can grow that talent. The pitching side, they've always been able to produce talent. I wasn't worried about the Pablo Lopez loss for that starting rotation as far as long term, but for right now, they might feel it for one season if Cueto isn't able to hold up. They have another young phenom coming in Perez, I believe. He and Alcantara are going to form a fantastic 1-2 that's going to be unlike anything we've seen in the majors in probably the last 10, 15 years. The Marlins should have a fantastic 1-2 at the top of their rotation probably next season, maybe 2025. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But for right now, I don't see them contending in that division. Last is going to be the Washington Nationals. This is a team that's brought a ton of young players into their roster over the last year. I don't necessarily like the veteran additions that they've made, bringing in Candelario. I think there was other options out there that they could have gone with. Candelario just doesn't have, I think, what it takes to be a consistent major leaguer, and his struggles, I think, could permeate to the rest of the lineup. They're taking chances on guys like Dom Smith, Corey Dickerson, etc., and I think there's other players that they could have gone out there to try to do that with. Now, they have some really good prospects, as I mentioned. C.J. Abrams is going to be their shortstop this year. He should be fantastic for them. Really liked him with the San Diego Padres. Their rotation should be fantastic as well. Mackenzie Gore coming over in that same trade. Josiah Gray from the Dodgers. They really rebuilt this team on the fly with some really high blue chip prospects. Now the question will be, can they get those blue chip prospects to turn into blue chip players and become the next superstars for the Washington Nationals? If they're able to do that within the next, say, year and a half, the Washington Nationals could quickly go from a rebuilding team to a contending team in the NL East. That's, by the way, very competitive for the next several years. And things look good for them. The question will be, as far as the pieces that they have left to trade, a guy like Patrick Corbin, if he's able to bounce back his performance, looking at guys like Corey Dickerson, maybe they can flip him at the deadline. Their bullpen has got a lot of veterans in there, but nobody is really going to knock your socks off if you're out there in the bullpen or if you're coming up against them in the later innings. And I just wonder if those guys are able to take the opportunity and run with it. Surprised Juan Soto hasn't signed a contract extension yet with the Padres? I'm not. I mean, you're talking about the Shohei Ohtani's contract and seeing how high that's going to go. Once you see what the price is set for Shohei, then you could really see a very nice contract for Soto. I think probably last year he got the 15-year, $440 million contract offer from the Nationals. When he said no to that, that's when they decided to flip him. Just looking at the AAV on that, that's pretty darn low, honestly, for a player of his caliber. I get why he said no. But when you look at Shohei Ohtani and what he could command on the open market, we're talking about a guy who could easily command 500, 600 million. And if he really wants to push it, he's better than almost any ace pitcher that's going to hit the open market. He's better than most power hitters that are going to hit the open market. You're talking about a guy who could push it and get $700 million for one player, because he's literally two players wrapped up into one. If he gets that level of contract, then you could see Juan Soto sign for 500 over, say, 12 years or something like that, or 550. That's what I think Juan Soto is waiting for, just to see the numbers that ultimately happen with Shohei, and then say, hey, Shohei got that. I'm a better hitter. Let me see what I get. I think that could ultimately end up happening with him. Do I think he'll beat Shohei Ohtani's numbers? Absolutely not. But I could see Shohei Ohtani's numbers affecting what happens with the rest of the market once he gets his money. But that's kind of your NL East. Let's go to the NL Central, shall we? We'll start with the Cubbies. Kind of another team that's kind of in the middle as far as their production, as far as where their future is going to go. They brought in some nice pieces. I like their rotation that they're going to have at first base with Hosmer. They got some young guys coming there. Catchers got some nice veterans there, Gomes and Barnhart. I don't really like the move of Cody Bellinger. I just think his days as being an impact bat in any lineup are over. Nico Horner's extension, 3 years, $35 million, good sign for them. Ian Happ could be a guy that's moved by midseason if they're struggling. Dansby Swanson's the future of their team. Locking him up for the long term, really like that addition, solidifies their infield defense. They're asking a lot, again, to have Patrick Wisdom as their third baseman going into the season. And I think they got some nice pieces as far as, like Nick Madrigal, for instance. Once a high top prospect, not necessarily as high prospect anymore, but you could see him take some more serious time in that infield if there's an injury or something like that. And honestly, if I'm the Cubs, I'd rather see that happen because I want to see Nick Madrigal reach his potential. If I'm the Cubs and in that front office, that would be the best case scenario for me. If he's able to reach his potential, then I might have something going forward. But as far as the rest of this team, it's a team in flux. Their rotation still has a ton of holes. They have Jameson Taillon that brought in from the Yankees. A nice deal for them overall, but he's number 3 type starter that they're trying to ask to be a number 2. Stroman's more of a number 2. They're asking to be a 1. Then you have Smiley, who really got lit up in his final spring training start anyway. Steele's there. I just don't really see a lot of depth in that rotation. I thought they should have gone out there and added some more starting pitching to this team if they were really going to try to push for this division. And I think there's an outside chance if they had successful years from guys like Suzuki, etc., then we could really see them go forward. But as it stands right now, I'm really not sold on the future of this team, either short term or long term. To me, the Tigers and the Cubs are in very similar positions. Tigers, I think, are worse off than the Cubs, but Cubs aren't too far away from being in the same boat the Tigers will be next year. If they have another bad year from big long-term contracts that they give away, say Dansby Swanson takes a big step back with that bat, then we're talking about them being in the similar boat to the Tigers. I think the Cubs' position is a little stronger because you do have guys like Stroman in that rotation. You have guys like Swanson, who I don't think is going to fall back nearly as far as Baez. But you have nice pieces there to kind of solidify this lineup in Mancini and Hosmer to give you a decent enough floor to where you should be at least a couple of games out of the wild card when it comes down to the stretch of the season. One team that I do not expect to be in contention this year, but maybe next year for the division, would be the Cincinnati Reds. Now, they have a really good young infield options. They have a whole bunch of them. Honestly, I think they need to trade one or two of them to try to get some more star players, or at least some more productive players in the outfield. That's something I could see happening during the season, is they try to flip a guy like Jonathan India, something like that. But they're a team that's got some young starting pitching coming. They have good young middle infielders that they could turn to corner infielders if necessary. But they need some outfield talent, and I think that's what could happen by the end of the season. They're a team in flux as well, but we're not going to spend too much time on them. They have some decent pieces that they could turn around and sell at the deadline as well. Will Myers is there now, taking over at first base right now, at least to begin the season, while Joey Votto is going to begin the season on the injured list. But that's kind of where the Reds are at. The Milwaukee Brewers. This is one team that's pretty much in contention year in and year out over the last 5 years now, but they could be coming to the end of that run. The reason being is because 2024, 3 of their best players are going to hit free agency. Those are going to be Corbin Burnes, Brandon Woodruff, and Willy Adames. Those 3 guys are vital to the future of the Brewers. If they're able to lock up one, that would be a good thing for them. If they're able to lock up 2, that would be an A-plus star, fantastic, great job by the Brewers front office. But I don't think they're going to be able to get both done. So I think they're going to have to trade 2 of those 3 players, and that will reinvigorate this team's next contention window. They need to get something for Christian Yelich, I think, in trade. He's a decent, productive contact hitter at this point. He doesn't necessarily give you the same power numbers that he used to, but he's still a productive player. You need a bounce-back year for Yelich, though, in that regard, as far as being able to avoid the strikeout, being able to provide a little bit more power in that lineup. After all, you're paying him like a superstar. You need to expect superstar-level production. I don't think you'll ever see it again from him, much like Cody Bellinger, but I think there's much more likelihood of him becoming a productive major league hitter than a guy like Cody Bellinger, who I don't think is ever going to be a productive major leaguer as far as a above-average major leaguer again. The rest of this lineup, they're taking a lot of flyers on guys like Jesse Winker, who had a down year last year, pretty much in all respects. Luke Voigt coming over from the Padres last year. They have some good young outfielders coming. They just need to free up some time out there. And guys like Winker and Yelich are taking up those reps out there that they could be having in the outfield. If they're able to move both of those pieces, then we could really see some of the next core of the Brewers come into fruition. But I think this is going to be another decent year for the Brewers. I don't think they're going to be, a 115 win team, but I don't think they're going to be below 500 either. That rotation is still very good. They have some good bats in that lineup. They should be very productive, and the NL Central is very winnable. So kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at this Milwaukee Brewers team. Next in the lineup here, let's look at the Pittsburgh Pirates. Now, everything around Pittsburgh revolves around Bryan Reynolds. A lot of trade talking about him possibly going to Texas, to the Yankees. Not going to happen, at least right now. Sounds like the Pirates are still trying to work things out as far as a contract extension. O'Neal Cruz had a nice rookie year. Brian Hayes had some decent production for them. But this is a team that's going to need some of their young guys to finally take that next step. They have a ton of position players coming that should be arriving in the second half of this year, possibly in the beginning half of next year. So the Pirates' time, the next title or the next contention window for the Pirates is almost here. I think we're still a little bit early to expect the Pirates to make any noise in the NL Central. They did bring in some nice veterans to this team. I really like the addition of Carlos Santana to this team, a professional hitter, somebody who can show the process through the lineup, of course, and then Andrew McCutchen, Pittsburgh royalty, shows what it means to be a Pittsburgh Pirate, especially when you have a guy in the locker room like Brian Reynolds who's literally saying, I want out of here. This is not where I want to be. That's what I think is going to be important here for the Pirates to be able to show that lineage from Pittsburgh Pirates past in McCutchen and say, hey, this is what we expect you to be going forward. That level of production, that level of consistency. Their rotation has some nice pieces in it, but they're counting on a lot of holdovers, I guess that we'll call it, stopgap solutions, spackle, if you will. Mitch Keller's going to be their opening day starter, but beyond that, you're talking about Vince Velasquez, Rich Hill, nobody who you're really going to be counting on in 5 years to be in that starting staff. That's where the issue is for the Pittsburgh Pirates. They don't really have the pitching prospects coming. That's why you could see in a trade for Brian Reynolds some pitching prospects going back that direction. That's the one area that the Pirates are looking to have some prospects come in via trade. But that's where the Pirates are at. Do not expect them to be contenders in that division. Last one is going to be the St. Louis Cardinals. We talked a little bit at the top anyway about Jordan Walker breaking camp with them. He's going to probably be their everyday left fielder, probably getting some at-bats at DH, etc. But they have a lot of options out there in the outfield. They didn't really trade away any of their options that they had, so they still have a little bit of a logjam out there that they could try to solve during the season. So keep your eyes peeled for, at some point in, say, June or July, them moving one of those outfield options for possibly a pitcher. They have a lot of guys in that rotation that are on one-year contracts right now. They could try to get a trade done with those outfield depth that they have and try to bring in a long-term, cost-controlled starting pitcher. But this lineup is pretty darn good. Yadier Molina is no longer there. Wilson Contreras is a better bat at that spot. A little bit worse defender, but we'll see how good of a defender he can be with the St. Louis Cardinals. Got to think Yadier Molina is going to show him a thing or two when he shows up to Cardinals camp during spring training and throughout the season. But I really like what the Cardinals did this offseason. They're relying on Jordan Walker, some of their prospects, to kind of develop in that system, and they replaced the leadership of a Yadier Molina by bringing in Contreras. As far as that rotation, Matz, Flaherty, Montgomery, really like the addition of Montgomery they made at the trade deadline last year. He was lights out for them. If he's able to replicate that next year or this year, they should have something going forward. Michaelis was great in the World Baseball Classic as well. Maybe he'll have a little bit better year this year for the Cardinals. But overall, this is a very solid team. They don't really have down years in St. Louis, so I don't think this will be a down year either. But that lineup alone should be good enough to keep them in contention, if not win the NL Central. Last division is the NL West. We'll start at the bottom, in my opinion, possibly with either the Colorado Rockies or Arizona Diamondbacks. Now, the Diamondbacks have some young pieces that are coming. They have an outfield glut, if you will. A lot of talent out there that they could move at the trade deadline or beforehand, but I expect them to move one of those outfielders. They need some starting pitching and they need some infielders. That's the one issue, or the two problems they really have. Madison Bumgarner is no longer Madison Bumgarner of old. He's now their number 3 starter. They of course still have Merrill Kelly, if you will, and Zach Gallen. Those are going to be your 1 and 2 for them. The hopes of this season are going to rely on those two guys. Outside of that, they have a lot of as I mentioned, outfielders that they need to rely on. Gabriel Moreno was brought over from the Toronto Blue Jays. He's going to be their catcher this season. I really like the ability of them to trade one prospect into a productive hitter, Lourdes Gurriel, and a catcher of your future in Gabriel Moreno. There's really just a nice trade anyway for the Diamondbacks to really solidify that spot in their lineup with Gabriel Moreno. Gurriel is only on a 1 or 2 year deal left that he has left on the contract right now, and so he's not going to be long for the Diamondbacks, I believe. There's not really a spot for him defensively. He struggles in the outfield. He could be moved to second base, I suppose, but they already have Ketel Marte there, honestly, and we'll see what ultimately happens there. But Diamondbacks are going to finish in the bottom 2 of this division, I believe. The Colorado Rockies are the other team I just mentioned that I don't expect to really contend in this division. They just don't have the starting pitching. Colorado's never really had the starting pitching to contend with the likes of the Padres, the Giants, or the Dodgers, depending on what year it is. And this year's going to be no different. Love the addition of Jurickson Profar. I really like a bounce back year here for Charlie Blackmon, and then a dynamic year I'm expecting for Chris Bryant. He was terrible last year for the Rockies, only played in like 40 games. He's knocking the cover off the ball, and I think that's why the Rockies didn't move him when they could have this offseason, because I think they're going to try to do what they did with Nolan Arenado at some point and flip him, try to reinvest some of that prospect capital, etc. But Moustakas is there, etc. It looks like. I don't expect a lot from this team. That the bullpen anyway. They have Brad Hand. They have some decent options back there. They brought in Pierce Johnson. Daniel Bard had the injury, of course. But again, I'm not expecting much from this team going forward. I think they need to reset this roster. They need to figure out pitching. But we're talking, 30 years of Rockies baseball, and they haven't been able to figure it out. I don't think they're going to be able to figure it out this year. That's for sure. But count on the Rockies to finish in the bottom 2 of this division. Now, for the top 3 in this division, top 3 loosely with the Giants. They missed out on pretty much all of their top targets this offseason. They did spend money on Michael Conforto. They brought in, trying to remember his name, from the Mariners. Mitch Haniger, there it is. He was a piece I really liked as kind of a depth outfielder for them, somebody to take over in right or left depending on how things worked out. If they're able to bring in Aaron Judge, they brought back Jock Peterson on a 1-year deal. They took some chances in that rotation on 1-year deals as well. Joey Bart, everybody says he's going to have a great year. We haven't seen it in, 2 or 3 years now. Brandon Crawford's getting to the end of his career. Yastrzemski was probably their only consistent outfielder last year. Take that with what you will. I just don't see a lot of production coming from this lineup per se, and they're counting on a lot of what-ifs in that rotation. Logan Webb should be their ace. But outside of that, you're talking about guys who've had some good years in the past, yes, but you're counting on them either having a healthy full season, a bounce back season, or replicate a peak season, if you will. So none of these guys are going to be expected performance to be where they should. So for instance, Logan Webb solidifies your number 1, but if you're counting on who's going to be the number 2 in this rotation, Ross Stripling could be, but he might not. Mania could be, but he might not. Cobb has been in the past, but if you're counting on him to be a number 2 in the rotation, I think you're fooling yourself. Alex Wood, I really like what he's been able to do through his entire career, really like the pitcher, but at this point in his career, asking him to be anything close to a number 2 or a 3 starter is asking for way too much. So I just think the Giants are going to be a little too inconsistent to be able to compete with the likes of the Padres or the Dodgers. So let's go to the San Diego Padres. One of the most surprising teams of the offseason, bringing in guys like Xander Bogaerts. They should have some decent options in their lineup, of course, now with Tatis Jr. coming back after the 20th. But this lineup should still be pretty solid, 1 through 6, if you will. 7, 8, and 9 could be up in the air as far as what ultimately happens there. Their rotation, they're not going to have Joe Musgrove to break camp, but they still have a very solid rotation with Darvish at the top. Snell has his up and down moments. Waka was solid, sort of, if you will, for the Red Sox last year. Martinez opted out of the deal with the Padres, ultimately signed for a little bit more money to stay with the Padres, so good move for him. Profar tried that with the Padres and ultimately wasn't able to find the money out there for him. That's why he is on the Rockies. I wonder about their ability to be able to handle things at first base, because they're going to be trying out guys like Cronenworth there. They're going to have Carpenter there at times, I'm sure. But they don't have necessarily that one guy at first base that you can count on to either A, be a masher, or B, be able to be that defensive glove over there. Josh Bell's been over there in recent years. Eric Hosmer's been over there for them in recent years. Will Myers has been over them for them in recent years. That could be a spot, at least defensively, or at least from a power perspective, that they might look to improve at the trade deadline. Cronenworth is a very good second baseman. We'll see how he handles first base. But Xander Bogaerts, the steal of the offseason as far as this division, in my opinion, just really solidifies that lineup. I thought he would have been a great fit with the LA Dodgers. Sounds like they're trying to keep their powder dry for Shohei Ohtani next season. We'll see if that ultimately costs them this season the division and ultimately a chance at another title. As far as the bullpen goes, they did a nice job bringing back some good pieces for them. Robert Suarez is going to start the season on the IL, it looks like. Hader should have a nice bounce-back year, in my opinion. He did not perform well after the trade to the Padres, but this is a team that has the pieces that it needs, and they have the depth to where maybe they can make one more move to get that one piece they need at the trade deadline. But after that, I think they're pretty much tapped out for prospects after making the deal for Soto. That's where the Padres are. Last but not least is going to be the LA Dodgers. Now, the Dodgers, of course, didn't exactly have a great offseason. They lost Trey Turner. They're counting on guys like Miguel Rojas to take over the position. Gavin Lux has been lost due to injury for a significant period of time. You're counting on, again, a platoon out there in left field once again with Peralta and Taylor. Hopefully that production is a little bit better. JD Martinez is going to be your DH pretty much every single day now. You don't have Albert Pujols in the lineup. He was fantastic in the second half last year. But the rotation, you still have some question marks because the health of Beeler still isn't there. Urias is probably your number 1. Kershaw your number 2. Syndergaard your 3. May your 4. And Pipio broke camp as the number 5. That's a pretty good 1 through 5, don't get me wrong, but you have a lot of question marks. Is Kershaw going to be able to stay healthy? Syndergaard, is he going to be able to be productive? May, he's coming back from injury. Pipio, again, a prospect status, etc. Is he able to replicate? All those kinds of things. As far as the catching tandem, I really like the tandem of Barnes and Smith. They should be fantastic. And this team will go as far as Freeman, Betts, and Smith take them. If they're as productive as they were last year, this team should still be very productive. But overall, really like the team as far as 1 through 3 there. But they really lack, what's the word I'm looking for, consistency with the rest of their lineup. Hopefully Martinez is able to have a nice, consistent year for them. They really didn't have any consistent hitters last year. Muncy turned it on really late in the year, like literally the last month of the season. Turner is no longer with this team. He's moved on to the Red Sox. But overall, it's going to be a very different season for the Dodgers. They no longer have Trey Turner there. So the Dodgers have owned this division for the better part of 10 years, it seems like. We'll see if they're able to keep on top in this division with the likes of the Padres literally putting all their chips in the middle for Xander Bogaerts and all the other pieces they brought in over the last few years. That's kind of your breakdown of team by team, if you will. We'll go into some fantasy drafts here in just a few minutes, but just kind of break down the division by division standings for you guys. Let me pull up the... wonder if they have last year's standings still somewhere. Let me see. Pull that up for you guys. Standings, there we go. I did say standings, right? There we go. League standings. Last year. Regular season, not spring training. All right, we'll start in the American League East. This is how things wrapped up last year in the American League East. Yankees started the season 61 and like 23. They were off to a fantastic start and then literally fell on their face. Literally a 500 team, struggled in the postseason before getting hammered by the Astros. Toronto Blue Jays got off to the terrible start, inconsistent performance in their lineup and in their rotation. Team that I picked to go to the World Series really struggled. Came on a little stronger in July and August. Were able to get to a wild card spot. Made a little bit of noise, but not a lot. The Rays, of course, consistent as always. Orioles made a really strong push last year, got above 500, and Red Sox were, of course, in the cellar. I think Red Sox are still going to be the number 5 team in this division. The question is, how do you sort out 1 through 4? If the Yankees struggle with their health, we could see them finish as low as 4. If they stay healthy and have bounce-back years from everybody, we could see them finish as high as 1. In my estimation, I'm going to go with, just to be on the safe side, because I don't trust their starting staff at all yet, is the Baltimore Orioles. Now, if they're able to get some production out of them, or if they're able to make a trade or two, maybe that rotation could be a little bit better. But Baltimore, for now, I'm going to put in that number 4 spot. Number 3, I'm going to still stick with the Tampa Bay Rays. I think the rotation, their pieces are a lot more consistent than what we can expect out of the Orioles right now. Orioles have the higher ceiling by far. Gunnar Henderson's going to be right there for American League Rookie of the Year. He was fantastic last year. He looks absolutely ready for prime time. Adley Rutschman, as I mentioned, is going to be an MVP candidate. If they make the postseason, Adley Rutschman is going to be right there for an MVP candidate. But I'll go Baltimore 4, Tampa 3. I'm still going to put Toronto on top. I'm going to go one more year at it. I just think the Yankees are asking a lot out of Aaron Judge once again to have a all-time great season, to still be able to produce that level of production. And then you're looking at all the bounce back pieces that they're going to be relying on, and a rookie in Volpe at shortstop. That's a lot of things that have to bounce just right. And I didn't even mention the starting rotation yet. While they do have improvement there with Carlos Rodon, I worry about their depth. I worry about Cole's ability to keep the ball down and avoid hard contact. And be able to prevent runs. That was the issue he had last year. So I'll put Yankees 2, Toronto 1. In the Central, as I mentioned, the very bottom of the division is going to be the Royals once again. I think the Tigers are going to be stuck in the middle once again, so they're going to finish there. 1, 2, 3 is kind of a toss-up for me. The loss of Tristan McKenzie to start the season, I think, is going to hurt the Guardians a little bit. I think they'll be able to bounce back through it. White Sox have a lot of question marks about, one, the ability to bounce back, two, the ability to stay healthy, and are they able to finally put it all together without their leader, Jose Abreu, now being on the Houston Astros. And then, of course, the Twins. They now have all the starting pieces that they want as far as that rotation. They don't necessarily have an ace, but they have a whole bunch of number twos. I think they're probably going to be the most consistent team out of this division, so I'm going to put them number 1. And probably a tie, honestly, for 2 and 3 between the White Sox and Guardians. But just to kind of pick one, I'll go White Sox 2, Guardians 3. So again, Minnesota 1, White Sox 2, Guardians 3, Detroit 4, Royals 5. Out in the AL West, which I think is going to be right there with the American League East as one of the most competitive divisions in all of baseball. I think the loss of Jose Altuve is going to lead the Astros to be probably 3rd or 4th in this division through at least the first month or two. However, I think they'll bounce back. I think they'll be right there at the end of the season. Do I think they'll win the division? Hold on just a second. So as I mentioned, the A's are going to be the doormat of the division. They'll finish 5. I think the Angels, there's just way too much hype on them for not a lot of production. I think that rotation's still going to hurt them. I think they're going to miss some pieces out in that bullpen, even with the improvements of or bringing in guys like Matt Moore from the Texas Rangers. But I think the Angels ultimately will miss the playoffs once again. They finish 4th in this division. I'll go with Texas finishing 3rd. I think that rotation is far too good for them to not at least be a 500 team this year. They should be a borderline wild card team. I'm going to go ahead and predict them to make a wild card spot just because I think that rotation is just that good as far as what it could be. Now, of course, the health and question marks are there. They still have a ton of prospects to trade. They didn't trade any of those pitching prospects that they have at the AAA and AA level. They have waves of pitching talent coming, and they look like a team ready to win as far as the rotation now. And they have the pieces to go out there and get what they need at the deadline to make a push for the postseason. So I'm still going to pick them to be 3rd. I'm going to predict them to win the wild card, one of the wild cards. At 2, I'm going to go ahead and say the Mariners. I think the Astros are going to be able to hold on just enough. I think they might win this division by literally 1 game or via tiebreaker. I think that's how close it's going to be, 1 through 3. I think the loss of Altuve at the beginning of the season is really going to hurt. And I think they're going to really feel it for probably 2 months, obviously, when he's out. But they're going to be trying to dig out of that hole for the next couple of months. And then it's going to be a dogfight down to the finish. I do think Houston will come out on top with the Mariners literally right there. And maybe the Rangers a game or 2 behind that. But it should be a very competitive division at the top. I think the Angels probably finish at least 10 games out of first place, honestly. I just don't see them being able to compete with the likes of any of those 3 teams, honestly. They have the lineup looks a little bit more consistent, a little higher floor, but all of those other 3 teams have far better rotations than the Angels, and that's where I still think the lack of focus has been for the Angels is on that starting staff. I mean, they're taking a chance on Tyler Anderson, who was great last year for the Dodgers. 1 year of production, a career 4.5 ERA before that. I don't exactly see that as fixing him long term, but we should see at least probably a 3.5 ERA out of Tyler Anderson on a good year. If you're being honest with yourself, if you're expecting somewhere around a 2.5 ERA out of Tyler Anderson, I think you're making a mistake there if you're an Angels fan. So out of the AL West, Oakland 5, Angels 4, Rangers 3, Mariners 2, and Astros finish 1st. Moving on to the NL side. Now, the Mets kind of faltered down the stretch because their offense really kind of sputtered. Their rotation has a lot of question marks at the back half of that rotation compared to the rotation they had last year. However, the seller of this division is still going to be the Washington Nationals. I don't think they've improved that team enough. I think they got the wrong veteran pieces to complement their young players. And unless some of those young players really take that step forward and become a superstar, they're going to finish right where they were last year. Marlins, I think, improved a little bit as far as the lineup. Their rotation downgraded a little bit. I still think they're an improvement off of last year, so probably going to be in the 75 win mark, but again, fourth in that division. Third, I'm going to go with the Phillies just because they don't have a full season of Bryce Harper. Hoskins is going to be injured, etc. Second, I'm going to go with the Mets just because of the question marks about their bullpen now that Edwin Diaz isn't there to lock things down. He was absolutely lights out. Literally was the best closer, in my opinion, in MLB history last year. They will miss him severely. Now, they do have some nice pieces to solidify that bullpen, but nowhere near the level of Edwin Diaz. And while I still think they'll still have a very good bullpen, I still think it would be that much better with Edwin Diaz, obviously. They didn't really improve that lineup like I thought they should have this offseason. I thought they should have gone out there and brought in a catcher, even though their top prospect is a catcher. I get it. I still would have gone out there and brought in a catcher like a Murphy, somebody like that to come in there and solidify that spot. Welcome back, Cody. But I'm going to go Mets 2, and the Braves I still think are number 1. I just think they're the model of consistency for the next 10 years as to what it's going to mean to win in the NL East. A full year of Acuna as well is going to be dynamic for them. I just think there's too many good pieces on that roster to where they're going to start out a lot better than they did last year. They're not going to have as big of a hole to climb out of, and they're not going to have to, try to catch the Mets in September. They're going to be there all season. But I'm right there with you. I'm so excited for the season to begin. Now, the NL Central, this one's kind of a toss-up as to who's really going to take it home. Nobody's really gone out there and made the right moves aside from maybe St. Louis. Pittsburgh, I still think, finishes in the cellar. I don't think their rotation pieces are there. They got the right veteran pieces around it. I think the Cincinnati Reds have a little bit better pitching, and I think their middle infield and corner infield is going to be a lot better than the Pirates. So I'm expecting probably a 70-win team out of the Cincinnati Reds. The Cubs, I'm expecting to finish third once again. Not really surprised there. They're another team that's in that same boat with the Detroit Tigers, a team that's going to be half in and half out as far as pieces, whether or not they're going to be rebuilding around or they should, go ahead and try to be a competitor. They brought in Dansby Swanson, so they're a little bit better, I think, than the Detroit Tigers, but not by leaps and bounds. The Milwaukee Brewers have a lot of questions long-term about their future, but not this season. I still think they're going to hold on to Corbin Burns for the entire season. I think after this season, they could try to move Corbin Burns. They're a team that likes to make their moves after the season. It was a surprise to move Josh Hader last year in the middle of the year. We saw how that affected both the Padres and the Brewers negatively. And I still think the class of this division is probably the Cardinals. So pretty much the exact same finish as they did last year. I don't see really any major improvements that would have changed my belief in this division. I still thought last year Milwaukee should have won it, but I just don't think they've got enough juice now that they brought up Jordan Walker, and that starting lineup looks so good for the Cardinals this year. I think they should pretty much finish about how they did last year. Just I don't think Milwaukee's going to fade as much as they did. I think that's about where they're going to be all season. So it's not necessarily going to be a fade in the second half for the Milwaukee Brewers. It's more of they're going to just be a second-place team. Now, the NL West is fairly easy for me to predict. Obviously, I've got Arizona and Colorado 4-5 in there. I would probably put Colorado in the 5 spot just because I don't think they have the rotation pieces to be able to compete with pretty much anybody else in that division. Arizona's got some nice pieces coming. Their outfield is stacked. They've made some nice improvements for their future. Giants, I think, are clearly behind the top 2 teams in this division. They finished third. Earlier this offseason, I might have even picked the Diamondbacks to finish third, but I think the Giants did just enough to where they'll probably finish a game or 2 ahead of the Diamondbacks. But for me, second place, for the first time in years, is going to go to the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, I understand the Giants had that huge fluke season a couple years ago, but I think this is the first time we're really going to look at the Dodgers and say, yeah, they took a step back. It's not necessarily that the other team had a great year. It's that the Dodgers are starting to take a step back right now. So I think they finished second in that division. And that means the San Diego Padres win the NL Central for the first time in a very long time. Now, the Fernando Tatis Jr. move is going to be interesting for them. Bogarts is going to give them some consistency up the middle, their lineup, etc. Question is going to be, can their lineup or their rotation stay healthy? They already have Musgrove on the IL, but I think they have enough to get the job done, and I think they have enough prospects to be able to make one more move to get what they need at the trade deadline. So I think the Padres finish first, Dodgers second, Giants third, Diamondbacks four, and Rockies in the fifth spot. So that's how I expect things to go. As far as the wild card teams on each side, let's look at the American League first. I'll go ahead and say the Yankees make one of the wild card spots because I got Toronto winning the division. That's one of your wild cards. Third place team I had was the Rays. The second place team I had in the Central was the White Sox. And the second place team I had in the West was the Mariners. I'm going to go ahead and say the Mariners make the playoffs as well. So that's two wild cards. And for my third and final wild card, I'm going to go ahead and say the Rangers finish as a wild card team. I think the Rays are going to be about where they were last year, around that 86 win mark. I think the Rangers are going to be right around the 86, 87 mark as well. I think the Baltimore Orioles are probably going to finish around that 84 win mark, 85 win mark. And so that's how I see the season pretty much stacking up on the American League side. As far as who wins the pennant, that's a tough question. I don't think the Astros are going to have the horses like they have had in the past to be able to get it done. I think their lineup's going to be a little bit better than it was last year, as long as Altuve comes back healthy and they don't have injury issues. But I don't think they're going to be able to get there. Do I think Minnesota's going to be able to do it? No. I might go back to back with Toronto again. Toronto still has the prospects to go out there and get what they need at the deadline as well. I'll go ahead and say the Blue Jays win the American League. They're my pick for the American League for the second straight year. Let's see if they don't make me eat crow once again. On the NL side, let's pick the wild cards first. Mets I had as a second place team. I'm going to go ahead and pick them for one of the wild cards. Brewers I had as a second place team. Dodgers I had as a second place team. Dodgers get another wild card. So that leaves me the choices of the Giants, the Brewers, and the Phillies for the final wild card. I'll say Philly gets it once again. As far as who wins the pennant, I know a lot of the MLB Network guys are picking St. Louis to kind of be the surprise World Series team out of the NL. I'm tempted to go Padres once again because I might have been just 1 year early on that pick to have the Blue Jays and Padres in the World Series. I just don't think the Cardinals have enough to really go over these super teams. I don't think they have enough to beat Atlanta. I don't think they have enough to beat the Mets. I don't think they have enough to beat the Padres. Maybe the Dodgers, depending on what they end up doing this season, but the Dodgers are in kind of a hold mode while they wait for Shohei next year. I just don't believe in the Mets. I just don't think they have enough offensively. They didn't solve their issues enough. Do I believe they could go out there and get it? Absolutely. Do I think they have the bullpen pieces? They're better in the bullpen, but they don't necessarily have the back-end closer back there anymore. I do have questions about health for the Atlanta Braves and about production for this back half of that rotation. So I'm going to go for the second straight year, Blue Jays in the American League, Padres in the National League. And hopefully both teams don't make me fall on my face once again. But who would win the World Series between the two? Based on starting rotation, I'd probably say the Blue Jays. I would say they don't have this big-time performers that the Padres do. Padres have enough starting pitching when healthy with Musgrove and Darvish at the top. I think they could trade for the starter that they need for that number 3 spot in a postseason series. And if not, they still have enough to at least be competitive. I just think they have more clutch players, though. Like Manny Machado, one of the most clutch players you'll ever see play the game. Bogarts, another clutch player. Soto, when the lights shine brightest, he shines even brighter. I'll go with the I'll go with the Padres to beat the Blue Jays. Even though I really like the rotation of the Blue Jays better, I just think the hitters of the Padres are going to be able to get the best of the pitchers for the Blue Jays. So my pick for the World Series would be Padres win, Blue Jays lose the World Series. So in case you guys are missed out on my predictions, I got the Blue Jays winning the AL East, wild card being the New York Yankees, with the Rays and Orioles just missing out in the postseason. In the American League Central, I have the Twins winning the division, everybody else missing. And then in the AL West, I have the Astros winning it by like a tiebreaker or like one game over the Mariners, and the Rangers finishing probably a game or two behind that. So I just think the rotation is going to be that much better for all three of those teams than pretty much anybody else in that division. They should be fantastic. Blake Snell, yeah. But Blake Snell has his good and bad moments. You can't count on him for, say, an 8-inning start. You can count on him for 5 good innings, but if you're counting on him for 8, I think that's asking a lot. But managers have a quick hook in the World Series anyway, so maybe that's not a bad thing. But on the NL side, I have the Atlanta Braves winning the division in the NL East, wild cards being the Mets and Phillies. NL Central, the Cardinals. In the NL West, I have the Padres winning the division, Dodgers getting a wild card spot, with the Padres going to the World Series and beating the Toronto Blue Jays. So there you have the predictions, gone team by team as to how things will work out for them, how they've improved their rosters, those kinds of things. If you're just joining us, make sure you hit that subscribe button and like the video. We will be live for you guys multiple times throughout the season. We're going to try to bring you a game pretty much every single night live here on YouTube. So tomorrow night, for instance, we'll have the Angels versus the A's. Friday, I believe we're doing, I want to say it's the San Diego game. And then on Sunday, we're going to be doing the Yankees and Giants and Guardians and Mariners games. So kind of keep your eyes peeled for those as we get into those into Major League Baseball action. Opening day is tomorrow. I would be doing live games for you guys all day long, but unfortunately, I have a 9-to-5 job. But we'll be trying to do a live game for you guys pretty much every single night. I think the 3rd, we are going to be doing the Angels and Mariners again. And then on Tuesday, I think we're going to do the 3 o'clock game, I want to say. I'm trying to read the board from across the room. Arizona and somebody, I can't remember who they play. And then the Rangers and Baltimore in the nightcap for that one. But as I mentioned, we'll be having a live game for you guys pretty much every single night except for this coming Saturday. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. We'll be trying to do the Sunday night baseball game for you guys every single one of those this year as well. But really appreciate you guys. So let's kind of get on to the fantasy portion of the show. I know a lot of you guys like to play fantasy football, fantasy basketball, fantasy everything. So there we go. I use ESPN. You guys can play however you would like. Let me make sure it's under the right ID. I can't tell. Okay, good. Let's go to join a public league, shall we? Now, I've done this a few times before. I usually like head-to-head points. Category is also pretty good. We'll go with points, though. We'll do a snake draft. We'll draft now. So if you guys want to go ahead and do a fantasy draft with us, feel free to go ahead and log into your computer and do so. We're going to go ahead and hit join a league. 2 minutes and we're in a room. Okay. Go ahead and change the name for you guys. That way you guys can find me somewhere if you're in the league already. Let's change our logo. Huh. You can actually be the Avengers too. Ballpark? Yeah, why not? There we go. Let's go back to the waiting room here. Now, I got to be honest, I did not do a lot of fantasy baseball last year. I was focused on trying to build this channel quite a bit, so did not play, but we'll do that a little bit this year. Probably draft one or two leagues tonight with you guys, depending on how long the league takes to load and to draft. If we have a whole bunch of auto drafts or somebody's really dumb in the draft, obviously we'll do another one. I don't like playing in leagues where somebody drafts like, in NFL, if they draft like a kicker in the first round, it's not a serious league. It kind of throws everything else through a loop. I don't like to play leagues like that. I like to play in leagues where everybody's paying attention, everybody's competitive, those kinds of things. We did pretty well with our NFL fantasy drafts last year. Nobody took my advice and steered clear from Leonard Fournette. And the teams that steered clear of him honestly finished pretty well. The teams that held on to him and said he's going to hold out and do great obviously didn't finish as a champion of their league. So take that for what you will. Looks like Sean Casey also has the San Diego Padres going to the World Series. With the Yankees being the champs. I still don't see the Yankees being able to be consistent though, so maybe I'll be proved wrong. We'll see. All right, let's enter the draft, shall we? Gotta love these ads. In case you guys are new here to the Upside, we cover the MLB, NFL, NBA, and the NHL. We didn't do too many NFL basketball or hockey games this year. We did one or two, but we got quite a few guys who really enjoy us doing the baseball games with you guys. Plus, with the games having a more fast-paced approach this year, should be a lot more competitive. Ah! Look how close I got to getting Shohei. No! Oh well. I get the next best player in the draft, I suppose. Alright, so since I don't get Shohei, I have Judge down here at 8. He's going to be drafted higher than that anyway. Got to worry about his health. I'm not taking Garrett Cole. His strikeout numbers were sterling, but again, run prevention is what I really worry about with him. Soto had a down year last year, so I don't think I want to take him with my top pick. That's just a little bit too much risk for a fantasy draft. I want consistency with my top pick. Ramirez is there. Where do they have Trey Turner sitting in here? 16 overall. He's going to be gone long before I get there. Dang. Who knows? Maybe I'll get lucky. We'll start at the top, though. What's y'all's vote for the first pick here? If Shohei's gone, who do you take with your first pick? Total bases. Let's see what they did last year. Points. Judge was up there. Alcantara, Ramirez, Freeman. It's kind of what I was thinking, Ramirez or Freeman, honestly. Yeah, go ahead and take Shohei. Shocking. All right, Ramirez or Freeman. I think there's a lot of third basemen this year that I really like later in the draft. And I like consistency. Freeman's going to be asked to do more. His RBI total is probably going to come down. I'm still going to take Freddie Freeman, though. Alrighty. So, I'm hoping I get Trey Turner with my next pick. That's who I would really like to have. Just out of curiosity, as I mentioned, I'm a Rangers fan. I just want to see where everybody's been drafting him. DeGrom at 17, Semien at 20, Seager at 25. Good to know. I will probably end up with Seager, if I had to guess. Martin Perez is all the way down at 242. He was very good last year. Let's see how they finished as far as points. 393, and they're saying he's going to have a big step back fantasy-wise. I don't see that. He was still very effective in the World Baseball Classic. But let's go back to all teams. There goes Mookie. So far, only one auto draft, it looks like. There goes the second pitcher. Cole went off the board to the auto draft. Really like Manny Machado if he's available at my next pick. He won't be, but if he's there. Trey Turner, though, is my dream pick at number 19. He won't be there, but a guy can dream. And there goes my dream pick at number 19. So, who's likely going to be there? DeGrom, probably. I could probably wait on DeGrom just because everybody else is probably going to think he's going to have injury issues. Semien's there. Second base is a decent position, but not necessarily as high as all the others. Really like Seager this year. Acuna would be a great piece. This guy's certainly taking his time. He got really good duo there. Turner and Machado. Trout. Going to lose Scherzer here in a minute to at least the auto pick. There goes Alvarez. Going to get one of these aces for my starting staff. DeGrom's had a pretty good spring so far. He might be the guy. I ain't going to force it, that's for sure. Out of these right now, I'd probably take Seager first and Acuna second, as it stands right now, if Alcantara's gone. And DeGrom. There goes Bieber. There goes Alcantara. Simeon's the top player on the board right now as far as position players. About Stefan. Minor league gets a 5-year deal. Very nice. Okay. So, let's look at second baseman real quick. Arise is later on. Altuve's out for a couple months. Who's the shortstop still available? Bichette should be a very good shortstop as well. Correa's way down there. Give me Seager. He's the guy I want anyway. There goes Arenado. And DeGrom. Oh well. Thought I was going to get away with getting him later. I'll go ahead and take Simeon. Lock up my second base spot. That's some drama for you, all right. Didn't see how the Mavs game went tonight. They lose again. Yep. Couldn't figure things out in the second half. Again, surprising. That's a trade that really didn't work out for Kyrie Irving. Not that necessarily Kyrie's been the problem, though. Defensively, he's been a problem. Commitment's been a problem. Alrighty. So I'm going to need some pitching here in a moment. Let's look at the pitchers. Strider, Darvish, Arias. I really like Arias. Clase as well. And Strider. Just curious where Josh Young is going. $220. Not bad. There goes Strider. Not a whole lot of pitchers left here. Bo Bichette's a dynamic player this late in the draft. I might take him at short. How many shortstops are really left here, though? Bogarts is still all the way down there. There's only room for one utility player, too. Miss the days of there actually being that one first base, third base slot, the shortstop, second base slot, plus the utility guy. Things have changed up since we started doing this. Let's go back to all positions here. Going to go ahead and take really like Urias here. Woodruff's too rich here. Albies at second. I already have second. I need a third baseman. I already have Olsen. He should have a very good year, though. Which way do I want to go? Not wasting this high of a pick on Bobby Witt. MVP possibility with Austin Riley. Give me Urias. I need a pitcher. There goes Olsen. There goes Bichette. Let's do pitchers again. We'll take the best closer in them on the board. Class A. It's a little early, I think, to be worrying about closers, but I just think he's that dynamic, that much of a difference maker over everybody else. It's kind of like the tight end position in football for me. How much do you really want the closer? Same thing with like the catcher. There's not too many great hitting catchers. By the time my next pick comes around, maybe we're looking at Rutschman or Smith. Probably one of those two guys. I'll cue both of them just in case. So, should they be gone? Valdez is there. I like that. Fried is there. Fried's going to be looking to kind of solidify himself as to making that money on the open market, so he could be a good option. I like Springer, but again, injuries. Is he past his prime finally? Kwan's ability there. Who's got total bases locked up? About runs. RBIs. There goes Fried. Who's got some strikeouts? Hold on. Go away. Strikeouts. McKenzie, he's on the shelf for a couple months. Javier. Valdez. Gallen. All these guys are around the same. Nobody really jumping off the page. Pablo Lopez. So probably one of the Houston pitchers as well, but they're going to be gone. So it looks like I'm going to get my wish of one of the catchers. Probably get one of the catchers and one of the pitchers, hopefully. One of Valdez or Javier. There goes Valdez, so maybe Javier next. There goes Gallen. Hopefully Javier makes it to 59 and Rutschman to 62. There goes Bogarts. That's a good pick this late in the draft. In case you guys are just joining us anyway, you can check out earlier in the video. We kind of broke down every single team by team, as to what they did in the offseason, how their team looks to go this year. We did both leagues, and then we went through, kind of did our predictions for the league as well. American League, National League, World Series picks and everything. And then, of course, now we're doing our fantasy draft. We're also going to be doing live games for you guys, much like we did last year. We'll be doing live games starting tomorrow night. We'll be doing the Angels and A's game. We'll be doing another one on Friday night. We'll do 2 on Sunday. We're going to try to do at least 1 a night for the most part. We will not do one on Saturday. Already have a previous engagement, but should be fun. We'll try to do most of the Sunday night baseball games this year. We'll do 2 games earlier in the day on Sunday. We will not do the Sunday night game starting this on this Sunday anyway, but the following Sunday and thereafter we will. So it looks like Christian Javier did make it, and did Will Smith. So we're going to go ahead and take the scarcity here and go Javier. Gives me 2 really good starters and the best closer. I should have one of the 2 catchers left. There goes Cortez, don't care. And Edmund, don't care. And I still have Will Smith on the board. Alright. How much of a difference is it really? Let's look at last year. 350. He only got 398 at bats last year. I'm going to go a little on potential here and get Rutschman. A little. Will Smith is the better catcher consistently, but I think Rutschman has MVP level upside. And while that doesn't mean anything as far as fantasy, I just think he's going to hit more boxes for me than Will Smith. Plus, I think Smith has a good partner as far as his catching mate anyway, with Barnes that could take some at-bats away from him should Smith get a lingering injury, etc. Not a bad team so far. Still need third base and some outfield bats. Let's take a look and see who's left for the outfielders. Kind of like Chris Bryant is a bounce-back candidate this year. Marte's been knocking the cover off the ball. Hernandez should have a nice year. Adolis should have a decent year. Buxton, I could never count on him, so I can't draft him. Haniger's already injured, otherwise I'd probably put him in the mix. Riley Green, I like him, but he's got nothing around him. Nothing else really jumping out. Alrighty. Quan is still on the board. He won't be by the time it comes around to me. So with my next pick, we're probably looking in this neighborhood here. Hader, Cronenworth, Mullins. Last year, Mullins is right up there. McNeil. Batters. Altuve is a very interesting bet on because he's so late in the draft at pick 100. But when he's on, he's money. Luis Ariz is still back there. We'll see. There goes Hader. Got about 5 picks. Quan ain't going to make it. So it looks like probably Mullins could be in the running here. Maybe Santander. Let's see who's left for third base, just out of curiosity. Gunnar Henderson. I'm going to go ahead and put a mark next to his name. McNeil drafted really early here. Swanson. Well, I really do need some outfield. Nimmo is here. I do like Nimmo. I'm going to go ahead and take Mullins. Ugh, another early pick in Bryant. Damn it. Well, Altuve's probably going to be gone by my next selection. I'd rather have Marte, I think, than the other. So I'm going to go ahead and take Altuve and draft the risk. See if I can piece together that spot for now. Probably just do one of these drafts with you guys tonight. This one's taken a little while, even with a few auto picks. Abreu. With a fully healthy team, I can't really have an Abreu on my roster. Still need more outfield. Marte is going to be my next pick, I think, along with a starter. Points last year. Why do they think he's going to have less this year? A full 80-point drop. Win-loss. Strikeouts. Maybe. And his whip to come back down. So basically they're saying he's not there. Well, 5-2 record, 85 Ks, 41 saves. He did save a fair amount of games. Romano. Go ahead and cue him. Hosley. A 9-1 record is pretty hard to replicate, though. Okay. Somebody drafted Tristan McKenzie this high? Risky. If you guys are drafting along with us, let us know who you took in the first couple of picks. I think I'm going to go ahead and take, let me see how Snell did last year. 298, Garcia. He's going to be asked to do more this year too. I'll go ahead and take Garcia. And the best third baseman left is Muncy, Diaz, and Henderson. Henderson's the only one worth anything here. And I'd love to have Romano, but I don't think I can afford him at this point. I need 1, 2, 3 more pitchers. There's still plenty left. Ooh, pardon me. Gotta take Henderson here. Knocking the cover off the ball. Next pick is probably going to be Marte and a pitcher if one of those closers fall to me. We'll see. Just got a few more picks, then we'll go ahead and wrap up everything, kind of break through everything one more time, and then hopefully get to actual baseball tomorrow. Get these auto picks out of the way. I doubt Jordan Romano gets to me, but if he does, I would really like that. Welcome back, Charles. Yeah, I'm back. Going to be doing some baseball coverage pretty much every single night for you guys. I don't know if you caught the first part of it yet or not, but we'll be doing a live game pretty much every night again. And there goes the guy I was hoping for. But we'll be getting back into that. Be doing the A's and Angels game Thursday. San Diego, I want to say Colorado Friday. And then Sunday we're doing two games anyway, the Yankees and Giants, Guardians and Mariners. Going to try to split it up at the beginning of the year for all the teams. That way at least every team gets one of their games with us. And then throughout the rest of the year we'll just do whichever is the best game at the time I can. Most of the time I'll do Sundays at least a couple of games, depending on how the schedule permits. I know the Peacock game last year was very nice because that allowed us to do an 11 o'clock, a 1 o'clock-ish, 1:30, a 4 if there was one, and then the Sunday night game. That's a lot of live coverage, but we're going to try to do pretty much every day with at least something. Opening day is tomorrow. We are less than 14 hours away. Adolis is up there. Still going to take Marte, I think. I like Teoscar, but I don't know. Seems like a touch of a risk for my team at this point. I really like Merrill Kelly here too. But got to get one of my outfielders. Somebody wanted the Yankee shortstop bad and took Volpe. There goes Muncy. Gray, Eovaldi. How many did Eovaldi give us last year? 209. Heaney didn't play much last year, but gave 199 points in only 72 innings. That's impressive. They're expecting a big downturn for Martin Perez. I'm going to go ahead and say bull. Well, Marte gets to me. Marte it is. And then we'll see what from there. There goes Montgomery. I will take Kelly. Yeah, I'll take Merrill Kelly. Not many Diamondbacks are worth drafting, but he might be one of them. I can go ahead and remove Teoscar. think I've pretty much got everything sewn up as the way I want it now. Sean Murphy, Platoon. Jimenez. They really don't think much of Martin Perez. They have him as the number 5 starter out of the Rangers. He was the best starter on the team last year. What did Bednar finish with last year? Not much. Ouch. Pena's all the way down here. How many points did he get last year? 254. I could see that. Just looking for any other massive oversights in their rankings. Michaelis. Michaelis has a real ability. Wherever he went, there he is. Quantrill, maybe? Another one they're kind of predicting a down year for. Even though he's increasing his strikeouts and walks, half a run worse. So regression, basically. Riley Green, 376. Not enough to count on. Holmes has a chance for opportunity. We'll put him in the queue. Okay. I think we've found all the opportunities now. Eovaldi. Maley. No, thank you. Joe Ryan. 324. No, thank you. Gray. 260 last year. And that was an ERA around 4. Huh. Alrighty. So, I think we're going to go Gray and Garcia. Yep. Highest outfielder from last year. He's probably this pretty solid bet here. Drury, 343 last year. No. Give me Adolis first. Solves my lineup. Now I just need to get my team the rest of the way. Give me John Gray. Ooh, Bryce Harper. You're really going to sit him on your bench for 4 months? There we go. I need one more pitcher and 3 more bench spots. I'm going to need some type of hitter at the beginning of the season. Young could be that guy, but I think I want one more hitter. Somebody with some flexibility. Miranda. Suzuki. Somebody to start the year. Rendon. Cassis. Walker. He might struggle to begin the year, though. That's the troublesome part. I need somebody who's going to go off for 2 months. That's it. Just need 2 months. LeMahieu. Solid production, flexibility. Maybe LeMahieu. We'll cue him. Nobody else really jumping off the page. Let's see, 2022 season batters. Rosario. Elvis had 307 fantasy points last year. That's a little surprising. Tough break for the Rockies. No Brendan Rodgers to begin the season. Michaelis and Young, I think, are my next picks. How many closers are left? Doval and Holmes. Well, I don't think I'm going to get all those guys, but... Third base. Come on. Let's finish this one up, boys and girls. Jordan Walker could be a surprise. We'll add him to the queue, just in case. Come on. Speed up, my friend. At this point in your draft, you should already know who you're picking. Come on now. Come on, come on, come on. Damn. Well, with Clay Holmes gone, how does that affect things? Just have 3 bench spots available. Give me Perez, first and foremost. It's the last pitcher I really like anyway. And then we'll get 2 of the 3, I hope. That should round out the roster. Alright, so before we finish up this video anyway, let's kind of just recap everything that we did. Broke down everything that happened over the offseason with each team. Kind of broke down for you guys how things were going to work for your teams. If you want to check that out at the beginning of the video, you can. We also broke down how the divisions were going to happen for you guys, or how I see them falling anyway, with the Toronto Blue Jays ultimately winning the American League and the Padres winning the NL. Kind of the exact same prediction I pretty much had last year. That's pretty much how I see it going again this year. Hopefully the teams work out a little better this time. But predictions are just that, predictions. They aren't actually the game. That's why it's a game. You get to see what actually happens. So we'll see what happens. And hopefully we get to see some real improvement from a lot of teams that certainly invested in their teams this year. The Rangers made a lot of investments. The Mariners made a lot of investments as well. So we'll see how things go there. But as far as the fantasy draft, this is the only one we're doing, I think, tonight. If you guys want to, do one with us, let us know. But getting a little late. Otherwise, we'd probably do a second one with you guys. But things look really up and or really nice and rosy anyway for a lot of the teams out there. We'll see, if they have as much success as we expect them to. Rangers are really counting on the health of their pitching staff, which they've got a lot of red flags as far as health is concerned. Not all of them, of course, are going to go down. You're going to have some guys perform, some guys are going to get injured, and then some guys are just going to have bad years. And that goes with any other team. So we'll see which teams are able to stay healthy. Mets for years had issues staying healthy with their rotation. Now they have the ability to hopefully stay healthy this year with Scherzer, Verlander, Senga, Carrasco, and Peterson as their starting five. But we'll be live with you guys again tomorrow night. We will be doing the A's and Angels game, Shohei Ohtani's debut in his final season. I would imagine with the LA Angels. I don't think he'll be back there. I think he's pretty much going to go either to the Dodgers, Mets, maybe the Yankees if they're able to scrounge up enough money, but I'd say the favorite by far has to be the LA Dodgers. He absolutely wants to win. The Dodgers have been the model of consistency. They still have a number of young prospects coming as well, so it's not like the Dodgers are going to be, dead and buried. They're going to be just fine. Just got 2 more picks left here in this fantasy draft, and then of course I'll go to the league free agency board after this, move Altuve to my injured list, and then pick up somebody, whoever's available, probably a position player to put in my bench spot for now. Maybe a pitcher. I could use another closer. I'm not going to sell out for one. Really like my team as far as the consistency, and then I got a couple of good lottery tickets. Pitching staff looks great. Only one reliever though. Come on, let's go, people. Three more. Just out of curiosity, we're going to see how many saves are left on the board. See what his injury issue is. Iglesias is only going to be the minimum. I could put him as my bench guy. I think I probably will. We'll go ahead and put him on my bench. And then we'll draft. Ooh, Tim Anderson was available this late. Nice pick. There goes Josh Walker. 2 good players for them. I'll go ahead and take Josh Young. And there's our draft. As I mentioned, we're going to have couple people we can put on the injured list. Altuve is going to be the one we put there, though, because he's going to be on there for the longer time. Looks like Conforto is back. Performing pretty well there in the highlight package. Giants are going to need him to produce quite a bit. Only downside I see with this level, or this format for a team anyway, is that based on how the draft ends, a team that picks 10th also picks last in the draft. Just on sheer talent, it should pretty much go in order of the draft if you draft right every single team. So maybe there's a better way of doing baseball fantasy than this currently. Could have sworn there was more roster spots on the old teams, like at least 20. Stanton, Rosario. How many Orioles did I end up drafting? 3? Surprising. Alright, one more pick. Come on now, let's go. Finally, okay, let's go to my team. Alright. Manage injured list. 2 IL. Done. Now, players. Add players. Who made it to free agency? Anybody I really like? Donovan has great flexibility. Horner's going to play every day. Abrams is going to play every day. Let's look at 2022 season. Urshela, Mountcastle, and projections. Mountcastle again. I really don't want a 4th blue or Oriole. Carlson is here. Maybe. Carlson. that rostered? Could have sworn there was that Cardinal. Where was he? Okay, so those two. Donovan. Only hitting. He's platoonish. He's going to get a fair amount of the at-bats. I'll go ahead and add Carlson. There we go. Boom. Okay, and there's the roster. Appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Make sure you join us tomorrow, 9 o'clock. We'll be live for the Angels and A's game. Appreciate those of you who joined us once again for our baseball coverage. We'll be live for you guys pretty much every single evening, bringing you at least one baseball game, or at least we'll try to, pretty much every single night for the month of April and on. If you guys have any games you want us to do in particular, let us know. As long as we're available, we'll try to do those. Much like we did last year, we'll try to take some input from you guys and try to cover those games. Gained quite a few of the Phillies fans, so a lot of Phillies fans were very curious about watching Phillies games. So we did a few Phillies. Same thing for the White Sox and Blue Jays. If you have your favorite team, you want us to go ahead and watch the game with you, go ahead and let us know in the comment section. We'll try to do so. But appreciate you guys joining us. Thank you guys again for joining us this evening. And we'll see you guys again on opening day. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you then.